It's something that's been right in front of you this whole time, like how Geico offers 24/7 emergency roadside service to help you when you need it most. Or how athletic wristbands aren't for your wrists, they're for wiping sweat off your forehead.
Great. So, what are headbands for?
80s night at the dance club. Woo!
It's something you can't believe you never realized before, like how Geico makes it easy to bundle your home and car insurance, with even more ways to save when you add boat, motorcycle, and RV insurance. Or how a pony is its own animal and not just a baby horse.
So, what's a baby pony called?
Getting more ways to save. It's just one of the many reasons to switch to Geico. They're all right there in front of you.
Prescription products require an online physician consultation and are only available if the physician determines a prescription is appropriate. Subscription required. See website for full details and important safety information.
When you lose your hair, you lose more than just hair. You lose your confidence. But that doesn't have to happen. Today, there are proven medical solutions to stop hair loss, and in some cases, regrow what you've lost. And now you can get them online at 4hims.com, including the very latest treatment, topical finasteride and minoxidil spray. It combines 2 proven hair loss treatments in the only hair loss spray of its kind, and only 4hims.com has it. No more pills, no more messy, time-consuming applications. Topical finasteride and minoxidil spray is only available by prescription, but at 4hims.com, you can connect with a medical provider online who will, if appropriate, prescribe this new spray and ship it to your home. It's that easy. Get the old hair back. Get the old you back at 4hims.com. For a free online consultation, go to 4hims.com/care. Regrow your hair in 3 to 6 months at forhims.com/care. 4hims.com/care.
Your one blood donation can help save the lives of up to 3 people. Give blood through the American Red Cross to help hospital patients. Visit redcrossblood.org today.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
WIBC HD2, W298BB, WIBC HD3, W228CX, Indianapolis.
Soccer Saturday featuring Indy 11. If this is your football, this is your show. Saturday at 9 on The Fan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing tonight? I'd like to welcome to the stage the lyrically acclaimed. I like this young man because when he came out with the phrase, he went from ashy to classic. I like that. All right. So everybody in the house, give a warm round of applause for the notorious
Derek Schultz.
Give it up for him, y'all. Never been as broke as me. I like that. When I was young, I had to.
I just thought, with JMV not being here today, I just felt like I couldn't come into JMV's entrance music. I'm not a WWE fan anymore like I was in the 90s and when I was a kid into the early 2000s. And so, but you hear Alice in Chains, right? You hear that entrance music. And it's John's show. Then you hear his voice and you're like, okay, yes, I'm on the right show. So I just feel like it's always one of those teases when I'm listening to another show, even when it's JMV's show and it's not me. Let's say it's like Rakestraw or somebody like that. And I'm expecting John to be there. And then I hear his entrance music. And then, no offense to Greg, a dear friend of mine, or anybody else that might be filling in, but you're kind of like, oh man, like, this isn't him. What's the deal? So I don't know. Maybe you still feel that way. But funny story about that intro. That was actually my first radio show when I was at IU. The Thursday night sports happy hour on then WIUS AM, which is now WIUX. It's an FM signal. That was my intro for the first show that I ever did on my own. So that's always been kind of near and dear to my heart. Ditto for Biggie. R.I.P. It's Derek Schultz filling in for JMV here on The Ride, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Thanks so much for joining us. And I'm excited to be back again. I mean, I just have been missing this and have been, chomping at the bit a bit to get back on and get the opportunity to do this because radio is my first love. And I was a radio guy for a long time, I guess. I was on the air for a while here in this city. So this is still really, really fun for me to get the opportunity to do this. Like this morning, I was up at, 6:30. My son's on spring break, and he doesn't get up till 8. I have the one toddler in the universe that sleeps until like 8:30, which is amazing. And I don't say that to like brag and make any of you dads out there feel terrible about it, because I know I have lots of friends whose kids get them up at like 5:30. My kid has never been like that. which is awesome. So I'm super productive between like 6:30 and 8:30 because he's asleep. But he's on break. So I knew that I was going to have even more time with him sleeping in. So I was prepping for the show, and my wife came downstairs, and I turned to her and I said, this is going to sound really stupid, but I'm putting together this prep, and I'm kind of going through some of the old stuff that I used to do every day when I was in it every day. And it just made me nostalgic. Like I had a big smile on my face the entire time doing it. So I think we put together a good show today. Not only me, but Kyle as well, who is in today. So we don't have we have the fill-in host, not the fill-in producer, as JMV is Jasper. Is that right? Did he go down south? Did we find out where he went, Kyle?
He said he was going to be down at the Schnitzelbank. I don't know if he actually made it. He might be just watching Price is Right reruns from the 1990s right now.
Now, did I hear him right that his family's in Florida, right?
They went to Florida.
They left him here?
They left him here. He didn't even get the invite, and he's got to go pick up their car from the airport, so he's got a chore to do as well.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I guess you're being a good dad. I think my wife would like to get away from me for a little while and take my son down to Florida. But then again, traveling, it's easier when it's 2-on-1 a little bit, so you can team up in case anything goes wrong. But this will be a temporary absence for John, as he'll be back tomorrow. But we've got a lot to get to today. Obviously, a lot of Colts stuff, because you've got these owner meetings that are happening right now, speaking of Florida, down in West Palm Beach, if I'm not mistaken, and continuing throughout the week. So we heard from Chris Ballard and Frank Reich yesterday, and today, in fact, not that long ago, I think around lunchtime, maybe a little bit later than that, we heard some very interesting comments from the team owner and Jim Irsay about the Colts quarterback situation and their decision process, and a couple of things that really, I think, certainly piqued my interest, and if you've seen it at all, probably piqued yours. We're going to talk about that with Joel Erickson. He is the Colts insider for the IndyStar. That'll be coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, and I really like Joel. He's been on the beat for a couple of years now. I think he was the replacement for Zach Kiefer when Zach moved on to The Athletic, and has since kind of become their number one beat guy, along with Nate Atkins, who's also really good at what he does there as the other, kind of tag teaming, if you will, the Colts beat for the Star. But we'll get into all of what Jim Irsay had to say, and kind of look back on what Reich and Ballard had to say. And I understand there's a lot of frustration right now with Colts fans. I don't want to say Colts Nation. Colts Nation to me sounds really dumb. I never liked, there's only really one nation to me, and that's Red Sox Nation, and I hate Red Sox Nation, so I don't like using the nation term with any other fan base. But you guys know, I'm probably speaking about some of you right here, that you're really frustrated with what's going on here because you feel like the lack of activity means that the Colts are okay just kind of hanging where they are. And I understand that. I understand the frustration of the last couple of years, because it's very similar to what we just went through with the Pacers, right? Where the Colts the last 4 or 5 years, they're not good, they're not bad, they're just kind of there. And that's the most frustrating place to be. Because if you suck and everyone knows that you suck, then there's almost like this suckness acceptance, right? Where like what the Pacers are going through right now. You know that they're bad. You know that if you tune in, it's going to be a fiery car wreck. So why even tune in at all, right? Let's just get through these last 2 weeks, lose every game, get as many ping pong balls as possible, and move on to the next thing. So there's almost this acceptance, and you're at peace with it. With the Colts, you're so tantalizingly close, seemingly, to really kind of breaking through and winning something meaningful and going somewhere. And every time that happens, you fall short. And of course, what happened in December was, I'm not going to rehash that here. Actually, it happened in early January, I guess, when we're talking about a 17-game season. But you guys all know how that ended up unfolding, from the big win against New England, the breakthrough, what we thought was a breakthrough win against the Patriots, to what happened that gloomy afternoon there in Jacksonville, which is our last memory of the Colts since they haven't been on the field since. But a very fascinating offseason here, where the first domino has fallen, where you've got Matt Ryan, so now you at least know who the quarterback is, but we still don't really know what direction the Colts are going to go in a number of different areas, notably left tackle. Also, what's going to happen at wide receiver and pass catcher. And I was listening to John's show yesterday, and I didn't want to just get on here and parrot whatever the host of the show says, because the last time that I came on here in December, actually, I listened to John the day before, and I disagreed with his take. It was right after the Tampa loss where there was a lot of discussion about play calling and Frank Reich's play calling, and Jonathan Taylor needs the ball more, and we shouldn't be throwing, and Wentz is making mistakes and all of that. And I was like, oh, well, this is good because, JMV had this stance, and then I'm going to have a different stance, and it, makes for good kind of a back and forth from day to day. But I was listening to what John had to say about the pass catchers and receivers, and even when he had Zach on yesterday to talk about it, I completely agree. 150% agree that you want to talk about frustration and where the Colts are. That's one of the areas that I share that frustration with a lot of you, because I think it's been a real blind spot for them. Like, I'm not a person that's going to come on here and just sing the praises of Chris Ballard and, take his sandals off and wash his feet when he enters my house. I don't view him that way. I'm also not like the super anti-Ballard guy either. Like, I think there's some good. I think there's some bad. But if we are going to talk about the bad with Chris Ballard, or at least the areas where I think he has fallen short, one of them is acquiring weapons, particularly pass catchers, where the Colts they're just not close to good enough. And I guess you take it a little bit with a grain of salt, because what is Frank Reich or Chris Ballard supposed to say when you ask them a question about that? Yeah, you know what? Our wide receivers suck. So you're exactly right. They're terrible. All those guys in that room, yeah, they're no good. We've completely given up on Paris Campbell. God, can he stay healthy? He slipped on a banana peel and he's out for 8 weeks. Oh, geez. They're not going to say that. They're not going to trash their own guys. So you take a little bit of what they have to say with a grain of salt, but we've seen them say these things about how we really like our receivers and we really like our pass catchers. And then you go into the season and you've got sometimes a healthy T.Y. Hilton. At least we saw that in the past. You certainly haven't seen that the last couple of years. Michael Pittman, who is a nice player. I'm not so sure he's a number one. I feel pretty good that he's going to be a good number two for somebody. So it's not like it's been completely empty. But then you've been relying on, if you just go back to even the last Andrew Luck year, remember Dontrell Inman, who they had to bring in off the street, and suddenly he's your second guy? No offense, Dontrell Inman was a really nice guy and a great story, but come on, man, he was like on the couch, and you called him, and then 3 weeks later, he's your number two option in that offense. Like, that's not how a team should operate. Certainly not a team with any sort of real aspirations. Zach Pascal, again, nice story. ODU, right? Undrafted. He came here. He had a couple of good years. Zach Pascal was a disaster last year. And you can blame some of that on Carson Wentz if you want, but Zach Pascal was bad because he was bad. Like, that was independent of the quarterback. Pascal didn't play well. Ashton Doolin, again, small school guy, right? Great story, special teams ace. And then he becomes somebody that's reliable in the passing game, but suddenly he's your number two guy? He's your second best guy? Ashton Doolin? You can't live like that in today's NFL. You need to have better options than that. Jack Doyle, God bless him. I wish him the best in retirement. A great blocker, a great culture guy for the Colts. But Jack Doyle, by the end of his career, wasn't like some dynamic pass-catching weapon. He could do a lot of other things well, but he wasn't that. And the Colts have really lacked that for a long time. Now, I'm not asking them to be Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark, like peak, like, you go back to the 2000, I know Harrison wasn't part of that team, but the 2009 offense, for instance, because that was, if memory serves, that was the all-pro year for Dallas Clark, and then, Reggie had already taken off at that point. But even if you go back to the Super Bowl team, 06, you had a lot of great pass catchers too. And yes, you also had like Crefonzo Thorpe and Blair White and some of the guys that you sprinkled in, but you just sprinkled them in. They weren't your frontline players. Your frontline players were Pro Bowl, All-Pro, and in some cases Hall of Fame level players, and the Colts have just kind of fallen woefully short there. So of all the areas that we talk about with this team and where they need improvement, pass rush, left tackle on the offensive line, really the offensive line in general, which had a very disappointing 2021 season. To me, one of the biggest ones, and perhaps the biggest one, and one that they just keep putting themselves out there and risking relying on either injury-prone guys or underperformance-prone guys as wide receiver. Because I just thought last year you can say, well, Schultz, hindsight is 20/20 because you didn't know Paris Campbell was going to be hurt. Well, did you? Did you kind of know Paris Campbell might be hurt? Paris Campbell's always been hurt. So don't you have to kind of take that into consideration? Well, we didn't think that T.Y. Hilton was going to fall. Well, T.Y. Hilton's on the wrong side of 30. It's going to fall off eventually. Smaller guy in stature. He played through a lot. And I always defended T.Y. because I think T.Y. got this rep of always being hurt during like the peak of his career. And really, if you go back and look, almost every game he was out there. Now, sometimes he was out there on one leg. Sometimes he was out there with one arm. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he was playing through stuff all the time, but he was a gamer and he soldiered through it. Now, the last couple of years, he hasn't been, particularly last year, hasn't been able to soldier through some of the injuries, so you give him a little bit of pass there, but still, that's not something I blame on T.Y. That's something that I blame on the organization. Because, again, in Westfield, we're all talking about how great the wide receiver core is going to be, and oh my God, like Strawn looks amazing. And remember Deion Kane from a couple of years ago? Deion Kane's making like one-handed catches in Westfield, and then he goes down 31 out to the west side in Eagle Creek, and suddenly he can't catch anymore and can't play. It's like, what happened? You can't rely on those guys, and you can't keep relying on low-level draft picks to come in and save the day, or UDFAs to come in and save the day. It's fine. If Ashton Dulin is your fourth guy, fine. Ashton Dulin can be your really a fine fourth guy. If he's your second guy, then you're in real trouble. That's not going to stack up with the rest of the league. So we'll get into that more throughout our Colts conversation. There's a whole heck of a lot to get into when it comes to the Colts, but the wide receiver thing was something that I was listening yesterday, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I completely agree with him because I thought John was dead on there. Other headlines running through today, non-Colts related. The Pacers, more competitive, but they fall to Atlanta last night, 132-123. I think the Hawks had like 75 points at the 10-minute mark of the second quarter, something stupid. Offensively, they were just firing on all cylinders. Most losses now for the Pacers since 1989, and it's a little bit of a downer for me because one of my favorite sports facts ever, and this is going to go away here in the matter of a couple of months, is that the Pacers have not had a single-digit draft pick since 1989. Now, that means they have never owned one, traded one, or would have been in line to have one with a pick that they traded. So, to put it kind of in layman's terms, the Pacers have never had one of the 9 worst records in the league since 89. And that's going to change because they've just lost their 51st game. They lost 50 in 89. They drafted 9th that year. They drafted George McLeod. Hopefully they're going to draft a lot higher this year. Looks like the 5th pick, if the lottery goes their way, then maybe they're picking somewhere in the top 3. But I'm going to have to say goodbye to that stat because it really is, it's incredible that they have not had it. And, yes, they traded for Jonathan Bender. That was not technically their selection. That was Toronto's selection. And they fully made that deal following that pick for Antonio Davis. So that is a technicality. It doesn't really count into the grand scheme of things. But to go that long without a single-digit draft pick, you can actually flip that impressively and say, hey, the Pacers have been pretty good for a long time during that span. They've made, since 89, 7 Eastern Conference Finals? 94, 95, 98, 99, 2000, 04, 13, 14? I mean, I think that's, I wasn't a math major at IU. I think that's 7, right? Or maybe that's 8. I don't know. I'm just kind of listening them off the top of my head. And that's without a single-digit draft pick. I mean, that's pretty darn good, really. Pacers fans, we're always mediocre. Well, no. They've been not mediocre in a lot of those years. Now, they haven't won a title. They've only gone to the finals once. So if you want to complain about that, you can. But for the most part, they've actually been competitive, except for this year. But again, kind of like I said earlier, next 7 games, just close your eyes, grin, and bear it. I don't want to get too cliched and say bite the bullet and all that stuff, but just look away. There's going to be a lot of smoldering flames from this dumpster fire of a season here, and it stinks and it's garbage and the whole deal, right? But it's all going to be over here really soon. And then we can get excited about this franchise again because they're going to have a lot of draft capital, my favorite term. They're going to have some young players to hopefully build around guys like Isaiah Jackson and Tyrese Halliburton And hopefully we can see this franchise take a step forward, because the worst possible outcome for this year would have been to hang on to Sabonis and wait out Warren and hang on to Levert and end up being a quiet play-in round exit. That would have been the worst possible scenario for them. So it's terrible to have to live through this if you're a Pacers fan right now, but it's the best thing going forward. None of it matters if they don't end up using those draft picks and getting good players and franchise pillars, but at least they'll have the opportunity to do that instead of just rolling along into the middle like they've been for so long. Another basketball headline, Isaiah Thompson, a little bit of a surprise here, enters the transfer portal for Purdue. So 2 open scholarships now for Matt Painter. And I say a little bit of a surprise because even though he was a bit player, with Eric Hunter assuming that he's going to end up moving on here, that point guard job was going to be wide open for Thompson. Now, I never really viewed him as a starting caliber player. And I think we all would agree that Purdue had a point guard problem this year, and it's one of the many things that held them back, that and the fact that they couldn't defend a chair. But Thompson moving on a little bit of a surprise just because it looked like minutes. A lot of times you see guys going to the transfer portal when they know that there are bodies coming in or there's somebody established in their spot and they know they're not going to get minutes. It looked like Thompson, there were minutes to be had for him there. But physically, I'm not sure if he had the physical type, body type to be a regular Big Ten player, but a useful player. He could come in and knock down shots and did some good things for Purdue. Zionsville guy, and obviously PJ, his older brother, and long line of Thompsons, a well-known family here in Central Indiana. So we wish him the best with whatever he chooses. And then finally, Kyle and I were actually talking about this in the 5th floor studio when we were waiting to come up here to do the show. Both of us tuning in last night to women's basketball and their tournament, which is a day behind the men's. And UConn reaching their 14th straight Final Four with a win over top seed NC State. Double overtime thriller. NC State hits a shot in the waning seconds, under a second left, a three-pointer to tie it, and then UConn, Paige Beckers, ends up holding on to win. So with all of the parity that we've seen here lately in women's basketball, and it's in a much better place than it was, let's say, 10 years ago, the one thing that kind of remains the same is they roll out of bed every year, and UConn is in that Final Four. And, what are you going to do about it? What I don't like about that situation is I don't like UConn being the 2 and playing in Bridgeport. I'm not anti-NCAA guy per se. I don't think the NCAA always does things with common sense. And common sense dictates that even though the next region to choose NC State, the closest one was Bridgeport, I think if you would have asked NC State, they would rather played a game in Bangladesh and not had to deal with UConn and Connecticut. Proximity doesn't matter when you have to play another team essentially on their home court. And you heard from the roars of the crowd last night, that was a very difficult atmosphere for NC State to be in, and really not a fair one. Now, it's not unprecedented. We've seen this in the men's game. Remember all those years that Duke and Carolina would go through and their region would be like Greensboro? And it'd be all Duke and Carolina fans in there. I remember Carmelo Anthony's Syracuse team. This is kind of a deep cut here. They played their regional championship as a 3 seed. They played the number 1, who I think it was either Oklahoma or Texas. I think it was Oklahoma because I think they played Texas in the Final Four. But it was one of those 2 schools anyway. They were far away. In Albany. And you're like, what the hell? And Syracuse is a 3 seed, and they're playing in Albany? So in this geography stuff with the NCAA tournament bracketing, it feels to me like that would have been a really easy change for them to just say, hey, you know what? Let's not put NC State in the region with the Bridgeport region with UConn. Or if we are going to do the Bridgeport region, let's put UConn with... I guess I don't know if you're slating them as a number 2, then potentially you're going to have that. But and that of course was the region that Indiana was in because the IU women got knocked off in the Sweet 16, and then Notre Dame ended up falling short. So the 2 Indiana teams were knocked out the round before. There in Bridgeport. That's where we used to buy beer as kids. I don't know if I should. Can I? The statute of limitations has run out on that probably. For those that don't know, Kyle, I'm sure you're enamored with this Bridgeport, Connecticut facts because it's the next town over from where I grew up. It's the largest city in Connecticut. And so, a lot of that stuff we would go into to Bridgeport and even when I was 18, I would go into Bridgeport to buy cigarettes because I was afraid that if I did that in Trumbull, somebody that knew my parents would see me and then they'd tell my parents and my mom would she might be listening right now, so I actually shouldn't mention these things because she doesn't like it when I talk about this stuff on the radio from like 25 years ago. But Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. We won't talk about Bridgeport anymore. In fact, we'll come back and talk Colts. Greg Rakestraw is my coworker, and he's supposed to be on vacation this week because the state finals just happened at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and Rake was just kind of burning the candle on both ends for like 6 months through the high school football and basketball season. And he emailed on, I think over the weekend, and said, I'm going to take a couple of days. And then I texted Kyle last night and I said, hey man, like, what do we have lined up for tomorrow? And he goes, well, I think we've got Rake at 3:30. I'm like, Rake at 3:30? He needs to relax. He needs to take a break. But Greg, I texted him this morning. I was like, are you sure you want to do this, man? He said, yeah. And so we're going to have Greg on coming up here at 3:30. I'm going to yell at him because he's supposed to be at break. ISC Sports Network, IHSA Champions Network, Colts pre and post. We'll hit a lot of things with Greg, mostly Colts stuff, but then we'll get into other stuff too. As I mentioned, Joel Erickson, Colts insider for the IndyStar, is going to join us at 4 o'clock. Brian Neubert, Gold and Black Illustrated, will talk about IT's transfer, Purdue falling short, the narrative around Matt Painter. There's just a lot of things kind of moving and shaking right now in West Lafayette in the wake of what was a very disappointing finish to ultimately a disappointing season, considering what that team was billed to be and what they ended up being. And plus your phone calls at 239-1070. Or are we doing 5 now for the phone number? It's still 1070? Okay, I wanted to make sure because I know that we did the rebrand here, so I didn't know if they also changed. Phone numbers stayed the same. I didn't know if they also changed the phone number. 239-1070. Tweets at Schultz975 as well. It's The Ride with JMV. Back with more next.
It's Kevin and Query.
Jacob Tammy, former Colts tight end and teammate of Matt Ryan.
The thing I loved about Matt was it was like a seamless transition. I'm not saying Matt and Peyton are the same player, but I am saying it's the same feel. The guy's a leader. You go in the locker room and you don't ever have to question if the quarterback is going to be ready to play or is going to be doing everything he can to have the entire organization on point.
Kevin and Query.
Weekday mornings at 7
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Spring in Indy. And since 2001, Rhino Shield has been covering Indiana homes and businesses. Just ask Mike.
I was watching TV one night and saw the Rhino Shield ad, and I thought, well, if they can do a house, they can probably do a building.
And Rhino Shield's not paint. It's better.
So they came out and they gave me a price, showed me how the Rhino works, how it lasts, and how the guarantee works.
Business owners, you too can get the 25-year protection of Rhino Shield right now for 15% off the regular price.
They started on the building. They waited for us to leave, and they worked Saturday and Sunday so they wouldn't affect our business at all. This was the great part of it. I came back Sunday night, and you couldn't even tell they were here. There was no paint on the ground. They did a fantastic job.
Here's owner Shane Smith.
This offer is limited, so call me at 888-RHINO-41. That's 888-RHINO-41.
Don't paint.
Don't vinyl. Go Rhino.
Hey, don't vinyl. Go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
Bowling, 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 keep them balls a-rolling. Bowling, 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 Royal Pin.
Are you looking to stay cool this summer and have fun with your family and friends? Call Royal Pin Entertainment at 465-8484 to join a summer league today. Summer leagues are fun and affordable and last only a short time. If you're going to bowl this summer, bowl at a Royal Pin Entertainment Center. Call 465-8484 or go to royalpin.com to join a league today. Grab your friends and stop in your favorite Royal Pin Entertainment Center for open play. Reserve your lanes by the hour at royalpin.com. Come bowling this summer and have the time of your life. Call 465-8484 or go to royalpin.com.
Royal Pin, bowling, bowling. Royal Pin, bowling.
Realizing Geico has over 85 years of experience saving folks money and providing great customer service is like realizing there's a crumb tray on the bottom of your toaster, and you don't have to keep turning the toaster upside down to clean it.
How long has that been there? Hey, who needs some croutons?
It's something that's been right there in front of you all along, like the dedicated Geico claims team available to you in the event of an accident to get you back on the road quickly, or realizing that baby carrots are just regular carrots that have been shaved down.
I don't care. They're still cute.
It's something you can't believe you never realized before, like how Geico's 97% customer satisfaction rating means Geico is committed to providing the best service for their customers, or how you can peel the top layer of tape off a lint roller and there's a fresh layer underneath.
Marcy, wait till you hear about the lint roller.
You mean how the handle is reusable?
Wait, what?
Trust, it's just one of the many reasons to switch to Geico. They're all right there in front of you.
Every dribble, every pass, and every bucket, all in the palm of your hand. Because now you can sign up and bet. No strings attached with Bet Rivers Sportsbook app featuring award-winning customer service. Live in-game bets, player props, and instant betting bucket to bucket. Don't miss out on all the big games. Get in the action with Bet Rivers Sportsbook app.
Must be 21. Must be located in Indiana. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. 1-800-994-8448.
School is in session.
Sean Salisbury, let's talk about the new Colts quarterback.
Matt Ryan, I think you got a pro. You'll never have to worry about him being that guy. You're not going to extend many plays, but you're going to get a better pure thrower than the last two. And I can tell you it's like clockwork. If the weapons and he's healthy, you'll throw for 30 touchdowns and he'll throw for 4,000 plus yards, and you'll be in position to win a division.
Dan Dockage, weekdays noon to 3 on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. The Ride with JMV.
I am in the parking lot right now, hammering a bacon, egg, and cheese, hold the cheese, in preparation to go deep with 4 hits and put on a laser show to the likes of which you have never witnessed in your entire life.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Welcome back. It's The Ride with JMV. Derek Schultz filling in. I like this music okay. I think we might put Kyle to work here and put some of my own kind of twist on that. I don't know if we're going to do like Fish re-entries or anything like that, but maybe something else. Because I always think of that scene from Old School with Will Ferrell working on his Trans Am. Like when I hear that genre of music, like the whole like late 70s, 80s rock. We've got a lot to get to when it comes to the Colts. Jim Irsay with some interesting things to say this week, because Jim Irsay always has interesting things to say, right? So does our next guest, Greg Rakestraw, who is the vice president of ISC Sports Network, and many other things, too many to list here because we only have him for a couple of minutes. He is supposed to be on vacation this week, and he joins us now on the show. So I don't even know. Why are you on the phone right now? You should have hung up on Kyle. You should have just said, no, man, I'm off.
Well, you know, if Kyle asked, I would have said that. But since you texted me at 7:30 in the morning to see if I would be on the show, I felt obligated to come on the program to help you. Plus, you know, I'm still with you most Mondays in terms of Query and Schultz as the somewhat snarky graphics operator. And so I know how much Jake often carries the show. So, okay, if you're hosting a show solo, I'd be kind enough to come on for at least 10, 15 minutes.
Yes, there's some of the snark from the snarky graphics operator.
Right. I haven't had that hour because I've missed you the last 3 Mondays. So that was my chance to vent. Now I feel much better. Thank you.
Yeah, we've missed you. You know, Alan is great. We really like Alan, but he's not as snarky as you are as the graphics operator. Query and Schultz, by the way, Mondays on ISC, Comcast 81. Might as well get that plug in. One of the many, many hats that you wear is Colts post-game show host, of course, on these same airwaves every fall. So I thought we'd start with that, Greg, because there's a lot going on here the last couple of days. In the owners' meetings, we heard from Reich and Ballard yesterday. We heard from Irsay today. Let's start with just kind of what you think of the big acquisition so far, because you've been gone and you've had the IHSAA stuff, so I don't even think that you and I have talked about it off the air. Your reaction to the acquisition of Matt Ryan and where the Colts can go with their new QB1.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I have told people, I said, you know, it's the best the Colts could have done, and that sounds like a backhanded compliment. But no, that's not meant to be the case at all. I literally thought that he was absolutely the best available option out there. So now let's explain that a little bit. You know, you were not going to get Aaron Rodgers. You did not have the draft capital to be able to go out and get a Russell Wilson. And it looks like the Vegas Raiders decided, you know, they have been on again, off again in terms of their, you know, love affair or lack thereof with Derek Carr. Well, it seems like they like him these days because they try to go and give as many weapons as possible, namely in Devontae Adams. So who was the best available quarterback that was going to be on the market? That was Matt Ryan. So I think it's an upgrade over Carson Wentz. I think it's an upgrade over Phillip Rivers before that. Now, it would be nice if they would go out and get him some more weapons to go along with it. But I do think they're a better football team now than they were about this time a month ago.
Yeah, and you hope that Ryan will lift the rest of that group. You know, notably, I think you can get Hines back involved again because Wentz just didn't like, throwing it out there to them. He didn't like the short throws. So you hope that maybe Hines, it could look maybe a little bit more like the 2020 offense with Rivers, which actually, contrary to popular belief, was a very good and effective passing offense. And maybe Ryan has a little bit more left in the tank than Rivers did in his last season. But I spent some time leading off the show complaining about where they were with the wide receiver and to some extent the tight end room. What do you think is the plan there? Because at this point, Greg, I would be shocked if they didn't use that first pick, number 42, on a receiver.
Agreed. And I think when your best bet from a wide receiver is, man, I hope these guys stay healthy, I'm not sure I like that plan. And again, I think the role that Zach Pascal played for many years is kind of now the role that Ashton Dulin plays. If he's your fifth receiver, that's great. And you need a handful of guys in the locker room that are stories like Ashton Dulin, that are guys that have kind of come from nowhere and made their name on special teams, and you give them an opportunity to help you. And I'm not saying, kick Paris Campbell off the roster, but relying on him, you've tried that for 3 years, and that hasn't worked because he's not been healthy. And so if a big part of your plan is, hey, let's hope this guy is healthy, then frankly, I don't like that plan. For those that have been saying the Colts don't have a number one receiver, I would disagree. I think Michael Pittman is a number one receiver. My question is, do they have a 2? Do they have a 3? Do they have a 4? And so, yes, I think they are looking at a wide receiver at pick 42. Absolutely. I still think you could do both. I still think you could draft a receiver at 42 and could have signed a receiver in free agency, but clearly the man in charge thought differently.
This may not placate fans because it's all about win the ring or you suck in today's day and age, and fans want to skip step 1. They want to go to step 5, but step 1 is winning the division, something that they haven't done since 2014, which is, it's shocking to say out loud because I still think of the days when they'd roll out of bed every year and win the AFC South. Are you confident that maybe with Ryan and, Ngakoue and whatever they sprinkle around in the draft and maybe some of the bargain bin free agents, that at the very least this team could get back to being on top of this division again in 2022?
That is absolutely right. And again, let's from 2014 on, the Colts have largely been more good than they have been bad. And when they have been bad, it is because of having an injury at the quarterback position. So when you say, hey, the Colts haven't won a division title in 8 years, it is jarring. And yes, regardless of any other moves they make, I think the Colts, as they are currently constructed, are every bit as good as the Titans, if not better. And clearly, the Jaguars and the Houston Texans are still a work in progress. So, yes, the first step in any NFL team, in any NFL plan, list of goals for the season is win your division, because it guarantees you a home playoff game, and good things tend to happen when that is the case. So, again, regardless of what happens now, draft, after, etc., do I think the Colts are contender for the AFC South? I absolutely think that's the case.
We're talking Colts and everything else with the do-everything sports guy, Greg Rakestraw, ISC Sports Network, and many other hats. He joins us here on The Ride with JMV. Shifting over to college basketball, Final Four weekend. It's all Blue Bloods. I'm more focused here locally. I think it's kind of an interesting example of where the two programs are right now. In Indiana gets back to the tournament, they win a game, and I think their season is largely viewed as maybe not a success, but at least something that fans can live with in year one for Mike Woodson, whereas Purdue almost wins 30 games. They reach the Big Ten final, but they lose in the Sweet 16, and considering what the team was supposed to do, it's kind of a disappointment. Where do you think both of them go from here? Purdue probably has less of a gap, obviously, to make up, but, it's really tough to get out of that kind of Sweet 16-ish, top 20, top 25 program to being one of college basketball true elites.
I almost think that Purdue could have a similar result next year in terms of the NCAA tournament, and that season would be largely viewed as a success. just because I don't think their talent is going to be as good. I think they will be good, not great, because, again, I don't think you can – guys like Jaden Ivey, even if he had a bad game on Friday night, don't dot the Purdue program all that often. You know, a guy that is obviously a lottery pick, anywhere between kind of 3 and 10, depending on how I would say the next, few weeks play out for him. You know, what does Travion Williams' future look like in terms of, does he come back for one more year? Does he think he is an NBA, bound player? And again, I really think that now we will start to see the impact of name, image, and likeness. In other words, we were getting to a point where guys were like, you know what? I'm going to try the G League. I'm going to play overseas. I might not make NBA money, but I'm now going to be able to make, money doing this. Well, I'm not so sure that there are certain guys, depending on what college you are at, you might be able to make G League / overseas money by actually staying and being a college basketball player. So I am very curious to see, how that has an impact on not just Purdue, maybe a Trace Jackson Davis at IU falls into that. At a lot of major programs across the country, are guys more apt to stay unless they absolutely know I'm a first-round pick and I can't match that level of bank by staying on campus.
Sticking with Purdue and speaking of transfers, Isaiah Thompson, a little bit of a surprise transferring. I would guess that they're going to add a veteran transfer to handle the duties next year, but you saw Braden Smith a decent amount. I know, we had him in the Hall of Fame Classic in Newcastle around the holidays. Are you confident, maybe not next year, that's probably an unfair expectation to ask him to be a Big Ten starting point guard, but are you confident he could be the point guard of the future for Purdue?
He will play next year. Whether he starts next year, I don't know. But is he a rotational piece next year? Yes. I am very bullish on both his future as well as Fletcher Lawyer's future. I think Fletcher can step in and be a player to the level of Sasha Stevanovic, if not better, in year number one. For as good of a high school player as Isaiah Thompson was, I think Braden can be an improvement on him in year number one. I don't know if he can be Eric Hunter, a kid that's in his 4th, 5th year of college basketball. I'm not sure if Braden will be that. But the guy that I have compared Braden to all year is Jordan Hulse. And Jordan was a heck of a basketball player at IU and is still a pro 10 years later overseas. I think Braden Smith is that type of kid. So, and again, you got to remember, Purdue seemingly is the one place in college basketball where guys say, okay, I'll actually redshirt and come back. Yeah. And so, kind of the guy that was lost in the shuffle, because how many bigs we were talking about Purdue, is Trey Kaufman-Wren and what he can do. The bar was so high for Caleb Furst. I thought he was okay, a little underwhelming at times, but you'd expect he would make a big leap forward from year number one to year number two. So, again, I think Purdue won't have that some of the jaw-dropping talent at the top that they did this past year, but they will still have great depth and a lot of experience. And I think it'll almost kind of like a more of a typical lunch pail, hard hat Purdue type team. It may not be the prettiest, but they're going to win a lot of basketball games, and they'll be at the top third of the Big Ten again next year.
Jordy Hull's jump shot is like the Ken Griffey Jr. swing of Indiana jump shots. Right? I mean, I was hypnotized by Jordy Hull's jump shot.
And Braden Smith, I don't know if he's got that level of shot. He is a good shooter. But what he is able to do at his size from a strength standpoint, what he's able to do from a hand quickness standpoint in terms of, picking somebody's pocket, and the absolute field general he is, and the way he can find guys when it looks like there is nothing there. He'll be more of a pure point in college than he was while he was in high school, but he is a guy that can still score. And I think Purdue fans are going to love their backcourt for the next 2 or 3 years, if not longer, because I think both those guys are impact players in the future.
Let's end on a high school note, because it just wrapped up a couple of days ago, a couple of blocks away at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. It was a great Saturday for the state finals, and really the end of a fascinating season in 4A, because no one ever really established themselves as the team to beat, and it was sort of wide open. And Cathedral goes in and they win 6 games by an average of 14 points. Oddly enough, the 2 times they were pushed the most were teams outside of the area, with Bloomington North and Terre Haute North gave them a great game. But then they go in and they beat number 1 by almost 40. I thought we might have one of those like squeak by state champions, but how impressed were you with Cathedral really leaving no doubt who the best team in 4A was?
I saw Cathedral play 11 times this year, and that's the best I've seen them play all year. And if you had told me, Thanksgiving weekend, hey, Cathedral's going to win the 4A state championship in basketball, I'd say, yeah, sounds about right. They certainly have the talent. There were times when I saw them during the regular season where I said, I don't know. I don't know if there's enough basketballs to go around. I'm not sure if they play hard enough on defense. Well, go look at what they did in the final game of the season. They hold a good basketball team. Again, a top 10 team. Chester was ranked number one in both the AP and the coaches poll. That's going to happen when you get that many. When you finish your regular season undefeated, you're going to be number one. Mm-hmm. If you go by what the computer ranking said, they weren't far from that. They were number 4. So clearly a very good basketball team, but the computer rankings also had Cathedral number 1. And that Cathedral team held Chesterton to 31 points and held a surefire all-star and a legitimate Mr. Basketball contender in Travis Grayson to 5 points and not having a field goal in the state championship game. So the one kind of issue or concern that you had about Cathedral, because there was never a problem with them offensively the entire year, it was how much interest are they going to play defensively? Well, in the state championship game, they allowed 31 points while scoring 65. So Cathedral had the best talent all year, and they literally saved their best for last in how they played on Saturday night.
You can follow Greg on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw, Soccer Saturday, often filling in on these same airwaves and sometimes on this same show and ISC Sports Network as well. Get back to the vacation, and do not text me for the rest of the week, or I'm just going to block your number because you need to be taking a break.
All right, so you're taking care of boxing then for Saturday. That's off my plate. You've got that?
Yeah, I knocked on Knezevich's window because he's going to be my analyst. He's the guy that I'm leaning on because Kyle's a former fighter, and he was on a busy. I forgot that he's suit Kyle now, so he was on this busy sales call. He kind of waved me off.
to put it in ISC terms, Kyle at a boxing match is Jan Bozier at a football or a basketball game. If you feel a screen coming, just get out of the way, let him go for about 15, 20 seconds, lay out, and it'll make the broadcast better.
Yeah, I'm there to direct traffic. That's all. It's gonna be Kyle's night for sure. Take care, buddy. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Bob.
That's Greg Rakestraw. Good friend of mine and coworker, and we have a lot of fun over there at ISC Sports Network. And I know some of you may be listening to this still follow along with what we've got going. Jake obviously is on the morning show now with Kevin and does a great job there with Kevin and Query. But we did keep our old afternoon show alive on a once-a-week basis. QueryandSchultz.com if you want to go there and check out what we've got going on. But it's on we've got a YouTube channel. Everybody's got a freaking YouTube channel. Everybody's got a podcast, right? I feel so dorky to say, well, this is my podcast. Everyone except like my wife has a podcast. But if you want to check that out, Spotify, iTunes, all major platforms, YouTube, ISC, Comcast 81. If you're a Comcast subscriber, you can see the replays on actually at 5:30 today and throughout the week. But 7:30 on Monday night is when we live stream it kind of to all the platforms. And we still have a lot of fun with that because as much as I might bust his chops and not want to admit it publicly, Jake's a buddy of mine. And I was thrilled for him when he got the morning show job with Kevin. And I actually feel, I don't know if he talks about it with you, Kyle. I know Mark has to live it every day as the producer of that show, but Kyle has to put up with a lot. Let's just put it that way. Or excuse me, Kyle, you have to put up with a lot too with all my texts. Kevin has to put up with a lot. Got my K's mixed up there on that morning show. But you should definitely listen to that because Jake's a smart guy. He has some off the wall stuff, but every once in a while he makes once a month Jake makes a really good point, and it makes it kind of all worth it. It makes the rest of the 29 or 30 days okay because he will occasionally make a really good point. Joel Erickson makes lots of good points. He's the Colts insider for the IndyStar. He's coming up top of the hour. Next, Jim Irsay's comments, including... Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. What the owner had to say about moving on from Carson Wentz. Tell us how you really feel, Jim. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. It's The Ride.
Biggest piece to the puzzle is in place.
Matt Ryan and the Colts. How good is Matt Ryan?
What pieces fall next?
Irsay says all in. This team couldn't do all in.
I don't think they have the weapons enough to be really good.
So what are you going after?
When the puzzle's completed,
The Colts have wide receivers, a definitive need right there at a very high level.
you'll hear about it here on your home for Colts football.
I sit here, bitch, whine, and moan every day, and you know I will.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
If you love listening to our shows, then you've got to follow us on our social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Search 107.5 The Fan and share your opinions with us on our posts.
Hey, it's JMV. Ray's Trash Service is the largest independent recycling and waste solutions provider in the Indianapolis area, and right now, they're looking for great people to join the team. Ray's is a family-operated business and has been providing Central Indiana with industry-leading recycling and waste disposal solutions since 1965. They focus a lot on the culture to make it a great place to work. Go to raystrash.com to see the career opportunities waiting for you. That's raystrash.com today. Ray's, your recycling and waste solutions partner.
Indy 11 is back for the 2022 season with the home opener on Saturday, April 2nd at 7. Having you there is what makes our game day so special. So come for the fireworks, smoke bombs, ribbon cannons, and a brand new Indy 11 checkered home kit available for purchase at shop.indy11.com. Be a part of Indy 11's Blue Out Blowout. Get your tickets now. Visit indy11.com or download the Indy 11 app. We'll see you at the mic on Saturday, April 2nd. Brought to you by your Central Indiana Honda dealers.
The madness of hoops is down to 4, and real sports bettors use the free Prop Swap app to find the best deals on all of your favorite teams. Prop Swappers make thousands of dollars simply buying and selling college basketball teams. And here's the best part. You can buy and sell on Prop Swap without even leaving your couch, and right now is the time to check it out with the Final Four coming this weekend. Blue Bloods are everywhere with 4 teams left. That means plenty of action to buy or sell on Prop Swap. You can jump on the Prop Swap app, buy a couple tickets, and enjoy buckets of cash and the moments of madness. See a ticket you like but think the price is a little bit too high? You can submit a bid for a price you think is fair and then buy it. You'll find exclusive fantastic features on Prop Swap like filtering listed bets based on the best value, a free activity fee to stay in the know with red-hot tickets for sale, and a loyalty rewards program that turns your ticket sales into extra bonus cash. Prop Swap is America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Download the free app today.
O'Reilly. Right now at O'Reilly Auto Parts, get up to a $15 gift card after mail-in rebate when you purchase select Superstart batteries. With the power, performance, and reliability your vehicle demands, Superstart batteries are designed for lasting performance and consistent starts. Turn the key with confidence. Superstart batteries only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
When a health system treats patients with the very best in medical care and compassion, it needs a rare kind of staff. That's why Eskenazi Health never stops looking for professionals who understand that technology is most effective when paired with a genuine human touch. If you are a nurse, a social worker, or another professional interested in a career with us, visit eskenazihealth.edu/careers. Eskenazi Health, one of Becker's 150 great places to work in healthcare.
Join me tomorrow. I've got Ryan Burr, who will just be talking. He'll give you some golf bets and some Final Four bets. Of course, Seth Greenberg's going to break it down like nobody else. Join us tomorrow, noon to 3.
The Ride with JMV.
Just an average guy with exceptional hair.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I moved to where they'd hoped I'd be.
Heavy Things was a request from Jim out in California at Tuscan Bruin. Take it from this 69-year-old guy. Nice. Listening in SoCal, a fish re-entry would be perfect. Heavy Things would definitely be appreciated. So here's Heavy Things from Letterman. Is this from when this album came out? Is this 2000, Kyle?
This is from May 15th, 2000.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Farmhouse, which was the album that this song was on, came out when I was in high school. So that was a long time ago. I had an 89 Honda Accord that my dad let me use. He used to commute he worked in the Viacom building. He worked, which was awesome when MTV was still relevant. he was in that building with like Comedy Central and Beavis and Butthead and all that stuff. So as a kid, it was like really cool. But he used to commute into the city with it, so it had like God knows how many, had like 200,000 miles on it. And he said, "Here you go. Here's kind of like your beater car for high school." And it had flip up lights, and I had cow print seat covers, and I had one of those Discman things that you put into the cassette player. Discman adapt. Do you know what I'm talking about? You're too young probably to know what I'm talking about. Do you know any idea what I'm talking about?
The first car I can remember from my dad it might have been an 89. It was a late 80s Honda Accord.
Because I had a cassette deck in the car, but there was this adapter thing, and it looked like a cassette tape, and it had a wire on it, and I think it would plug into the headphone jack of the Discman. And then you could use that to play CDs off of your Discman, so then you had a CD player in your car, which was pretty sweet. But every time you hit a bump, obviously the CD would skip. So I had Farmhouse in kind of heavy rotation in the old Honda Accord. So shout out to Jim, another Fish fan, I guess. We won't just do Fish, I promise. We'll do some other stuff, mix in some other stuff. Joel Erickson, top of the hour. We'll talk Colts. I want to get to those Jim Irsay comments here. So let's talk about that before we go to the phone lines here, because I thought this was just fascinating what Irsay had to say about moving on from Carson Wentz and going to Matt Ryan. On the Wentz decision, this from Zach Kiefer, The Athletic. Quote, "It's just for us. It was just something that we had to move away from as a franchise. It was very obvious." This on Ryan, extremely grateful to the football gods, so to speak, regarding where we were compared to where we are. Now, the clarification there is Irsay means where we were, which is no quarterback at all after the Wentz trade and really no plan to where they are. But still, I mean, he's pulling no punches here. I don't think it's a secret that this decision was fueled by Irsay. Now, I don't think it was his sole decision. I think there were other people that felt like the Colts needed to move on, but the person that was banging that drum the most was the owner of the team, and if the owner of the team decides that you're moving on, you're moving on. And I think the fact that the Colts moved on from Wentz with no plan, none whatsoever, about what they were going to do next shows how hell-bent Irsay was on moving on, because generally you don't do that. Generally you move on if you feel like you've got something else. But I've never been one of those people that and we run into this a lot in sports where head coaches, this happens a lot. Well, who are you going to get that's better? I've never been one of those people. I've never really understood that argument, because if the guy that you have is not good enough or is not your guy, then you got to move on. You can't be thinking about who you're going to get that's better. If the guy that you have is no good, you got to go. I mean, I think that's a fairly easy decision to make. Now you're jumping out of a plane a little bit without a parachute, but they were convinced that Wentz wasn't their guy based on the way that the final 6 weeks of the season goes. Because, you know, a lot of people want to point to the Raiders and the Jaguars games, but God, that New England game, that was an embarrassing level of play in that New England game. That was embarrassing. 57 yards, whatever it was. You felt like if Carson Wentz threw one more pass in that game, the Colts were going to lose. And of course they didn't, because Jonathan Taylor breaks the big run against the stack box. Yay, happy, hurrah, we're all moving on. Walk-off touchdown. Colts finally slay the dragon. They beat the Patriots for the first time in 10-plus years. Yay. But it's why I've never really subscribed to this whole quarterback wins thing. Like, oh, yeah, you know, they won the game. Or touchdown interception ratio is another one that pops up a lot. Well, you know, Wentz had 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So what? Jacoby Brissett had a great touchdown interception ratio. What's he done? How's Jacoby Brissett been in Miami? Has he been good? Or have you guys watched Jacoby Brissett play at all? You know, nice guy, great leader, respected guy in the locker room. But come on, man. Touchdown interception ratio? Who cares? You know, that Raiders game, when Wentz threw that lame duck into the end zone, who caught that? Was that Hilton? I think it was Hilton caught a... If you guys know what I'm talking about, Wentz threw it up for grabs. It was like this 60-yard heave into the end zone. And the Raiders defenders, I think, ran into each other and fell down. And there's Hilton just standing there with the ball in his hands in the end zone. You're like, oh, my God, like, what a miracle that happened. Wentz was awful in that game, and he had a 1-0 touchdown interception ratio. Brissett in 2019, they played a Thursday night game in Houston where he was awful. Awful. His worst game of the year, and that's really saying something, because the second half of the year he was bad. And he threw no interceptions in that game. So we need to stop evaluating these guys based on touchdown-interception ratio. There's so much that goes deeper into it than just that. But Irsay's comments, I don't think are a surprise at all. Now, did I think he was going to handle it a little more carefully than tactfully than that, than to just, throw him under the bus? Yeah, I mean, for as poorly as Wentz played down the stretch, it's not all his fault. It's just not. There were a lot of other things that went wrong for the Colts down that stretch. And Wentz becoming the fall guy just kind of is what it is. That's what happens. The quarterback gets too much credit. The quarterback gets too much blame. Colts felt like they had to move on. I agree with that decision. They did, and that's it. And here we are. And now we'll see where they go with Ryan and whatever else they sprinkle around him. Let's fit in Mike's phone call here. 239-1070. Says he's an old fan of the show. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great.
Been a while. Yeah, hey, I was a huge fan of the Derek and Query Schultz, and yeah, man, so I've just missed hearing your voice, and I've turned on the radio on the way home from work and heard you. I was like, holy crap, man!
Well, I appreciate it.
Old buddy, and yeah, sure as heck, So just welcome back, man. And
yeah,
I didn't know you guys are doing the weekly thing, and I will definitely be tuning in for that.
Yeah, check it out. QueryandSchultz.com. We've got all the ways to watch and listen and all of that, and it's a lot of the old. Mike, you know how dumb the old show was. It's still just as dumb as it used to be. It's once a week of dumbness instead of every day of dumbness.
Yeah, I'm so happy I won't even make fun of your height, man. So
there you go. It's good to hear from you, man. Thanks a lot.
You too, buddy.
It's Mike. It's nice. I did this back in December where I filled in for John around the holidays, and he was taking the day, and we heard from a lot of former QNS and callers and all of that, and the tweets and everything. It means a lot to me that people even care or remember, because it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to be as long on. Jake and I did 8.5 years, and I was on really in some capacity for 12 years, and I miss it. And this is a great thrill for me. We still got 2 hours to go. Joel Erickson is going to talk about Irsay's comments and more as he joins us live from West Palm when we return. It's The Ride with JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The biggest piece to the puzzle is in place.
Matt Ryan and the Colts.
How good is Matt Ryan?
What pieces fall next?
Irsay says all in. This team couldn't do all in.
I don't think they have the weapons enough to be really good.
So what are you going after?
When the puzzle's completed.
The Colts have wide receivers, a definitive need right there at a very high level.
You'll hear about it here on your home for Colts football.
I can sit here, bitch, whine, and moan every day, and you know I will.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Hi, this is Ted Bishop, PGA General Manager at the Legends Golf Club in Franklin. This year, we are celebrating our 30th anniversary of being in business, and I want to personally invite you to become a member at our course, which was selected as the 2021 Indiana Golf Course of the Year. We are offering a limited number of 2-year Monday through Friday memberships starting at $199 a year. Yep, you heard it right, only $199 a year, and you can upgrade to a 7-day membership for only $50 per year more. If you ride, you just pay for the golf cart, and if you walk, there's no additional charge. These memberships will expire on December 31 of 2023. Legends has 27 Fazio Design Championship holes. Our regular players will tell you that we are known for great playing conditions and a friendly staff. Join the Legends Golf Club today. Don't delay, because limited spots are available. Call 317-736-8186 or buy online at thelegendsgolfclub.com. And I'll see you on the first tee.
Every dribble, every pass, and every bucket, all in the palm of your hand. Because now you can sign up and bet. No strings attached with Bet Rivers Sportsbook app featuring award-winning customer service. Live in-game bets, player props, and instant betting bucket to bucket. Don't miss out on all the big games. Get in the action with Bet Rivers Sportsbook app.
Must be 21. Must be located in Indiana. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-9-WITH-IT. 1-800-994-8448.
Hi, I'm a jewelry consultant at Shane Company. Visit us and you'll be dazzled by our stylish selection of jewelry you'll enjoy wearing every day. We have lots of styles you can personalize. Just select your favorite gemstone to create a one-of-a-kind necklace or ring. You can choose a radiant ruby or a sapphire. We have over a dozen colors, or a purple amethyst, London blue topaz, or peach morganite. We're known for our vibrant, natural gemstones. Customers love our signature shade of rose gold. It has a soft blush tone. We have all the classics in rose gold, hoop earrings, studs, tennis bracelets, you name it. We also have gorgeous gold chains in a variety of styles, including herringbone chains, paperclip chains, and more. If you want something extraordinary, check out Tom's Finds, our limited edition collections featuring rare gemstones from around the world. Whether you're looking to build your jewelry wardrobe with a classic, or you just want to treat yourself, come in and have some fun.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
WIBC HD2 W298BB. WIBC HD3 W228CX. Indianapolis.
The Pacers welcome the Denver Nuggets to the Fieldhouse tomorrow evening at 6:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Filling in for John, it's Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us on this gloomy Tuesday. It's always a bummer when you get into late March and you think that you're over it weather-wise and you're in the clear, and then you have days like this where it's just, whatever it is, 30 degrees. Let's go to the guest hotline. It is much, much, much warmer where our next guest is. He is in West Palm Beach for the owners' meetings. He's the Colts insider for the IndyStar, and his name is Joel Erickson, and he joins us now on the ride with JMV. Go ahead and just hit me with it, Joel. I'm bracing for impact. I'm like Chris Rock with his hands behind his back. You tell me how warm it is down there in West Palm right now.
It's disturbingly perfect weather. It's been like, it's not hot yet down here. So it's like 60s in the morning.
Oh, boy.
And then like right now it's just windy enough that you're not sweating, but it's nice and warm and sunny. It's good. If it makes you feel any better, though, I've basically been tethered to my computer for the last 2 days. So I'm not super experiencing it. Maybe that softens the blow a little bit.
Yeah, it does a little bit. It does. If you told me that you were like trapped inside the entire time, then yeah, that would make me feel a little bit better. But
I did maybe write some stories from a sun-covered patio. So
it's good enough. No direct sunlight. Good enough. There's been a lot to write about because these owners' meetings, sometimes it's like the usual. Sometimes it's you're just recycling the stuff that you kind of heard at the combine. But I thought we got a lot of interesting Reich and Ballard stuff yesterday, but especially today. Irsay's always interesting, right? He's one of the most interesting, forget owners, but people. What was your reaction? I didn't feel like he pulled any punches. I don't think it was a secret how he felt about them moving on from Carson Wentz, but those quotes were pretty damning.
Yeah, there's several different things I think that he said that he kind of laid out the case for why they had to get rid of him. I thought maybe the most damning thing was that he said that he talked to veteran leadership on the team and the stuff he heard he didn't like. That was one. There was another one where he said, "Okay, they lost to the Raiders. This is a game you didn't want to lose." Okay, and he said, "Your guys got to get you through the Jacksonville game." Speaking about the quarterback. Mm-hmm. I had just asked him specifically about Wentz. He said, "Your guys got to get you through the Jacksonville game. Has to. Absolutely. No explanations, no excuses." And then the other one was he kind of said what we've heard from Chris Ballard a little bit, maybe not put as starkly as this, but just the idea that you want him to play within the confines of the offense, and you're trying to coach him up, but at some point when a player gets out there, he's going to play the way he's always played. And the tendency with Wentz to not take some of the open receivers in Reich's offense, frustrating, I think, some of the veterans, that kind of stuff, it is all of that put together. And then the Jacksonville game was sort of the final nail in the coffin for stuff that they'd seen already.
Who do you think it had to have been Kyler, right? I mean, young quarterback, and we were in. For those that don't know, Irsay was talking about how they were discussing a trade for a young quarterback. He said it would have taken maybe 2 ones to do so, and I'm kind of looking around the NFL landscape at who would even be available that would cost 2 ones that a team would want to move on from, and just by process of elimination, Kyle and I were even talking about it before the show that it seems to be Kyler. Is that who came to mind for you?
He was one, but there's enough ambiguity, I think, in those 2 answers. Or in those 2 quotes about that particular trade where I think you could make a case for others. Because, he said at least 2 ones, which makes you think it wasn't necessarily like one of the big-time guys. That's been like 3, But I don't know what Kyler would cost now. He hasn't completely established himself.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is he said that part of the reason it didn't happen was that he sort of hinted that something else needed to happen to make this guy available. And that opens a whole world of possibilities that are hard to figure out. Like, what was the domino that had, was it a Watson domino that we don't know about with a team that didn't, ever get in the finalist running? I don't know, but that there's enough in there that it's hard to guess. Or it's hard for me to make an informed guess because he put just enough ambiguity that it doesn't quite point at any one guy.
I'm going to make you make another. Not only is this an informed guess, this is also a hypothetical, which is my favorite to talk about. But obviously it's going to be Matt Ryan. But if it wasn't Matt Ryan, let's say Atlanta just decided, you know what, we're keeping him, we're not trading him. I think a lot of people thought that Mariota was the fallback option. But from what we kind of saw emerge from that, I know you were on this fairly early, Joel. Could it potentially have been Jameis Winston?
I think it was Winston.
Okay,
I think. I'm basing a lot of that off of a report from an old coworker of mine who's never wrong on the Saints. He just isn't. Nick Underhill, who wrote shortly after they re-signed Winston that the Colts had a plane somewhere ready to take Winston for an interview or a visit same Monday of the Ryan trade. And so, like I said, Nick's not usually wrong on stuff that the Saints do or ever wrong. So I'm basing a lot of it off of that. But I had heard early in the process that Winston was a possibility. And when I fished around on Mariota, it was always, they're interested, but they're going to take some time. Well, that sounds more like a fallback to me than the, clear target if Ryan doesn't become available.
You had a really interesting talk with a Falcons guest on the Cover 2 podcast. You can listen to it on iTunes and Spotify with your cohort there at the Star and Nate Atkins talking about Matt Ryan and how the offense is going to fit. And I really liked what you had to say. I think you brought this up. I want to if Nate brought it up, I guess I should give him credit, but I'm talking to you right now, so maybe I should give you credit instead and have you steal it. But you said something about how, and I think this is one of the best attributes of Reich, is that the last couple of years, they've catered the offense around whoever the quarterback was. It wasn't like, here's our offense, you're going to do this. It was, hey, let's see if we can kind of maximize where you're good and hide where you're bad. But just kind of taking the bird's eye view of this whole thing, if we're to talk about expectations of a Matt Ryan offense, and I know there are still pieces to fall in place on that offense, if I were to say a Phillip Rivers type 2020 level passing offense, just with a higher ceiling and maybe a little bit more in the tank than what Rivers provided. Also, less physical limitations. I'm not going to make Matt Ryan out to be Michael Vick, but clearly he's a little more mobile than Rivers. Is that about in line with what should be a fair expectation of a Matt Ryan offense at 37 years old?
Yeah, I think that's good, and Frank Reich actually can back me up on this from what he said yesterday. We asked him about, if you're changing and tailoring the offense, how much of it is different, what's the same? And he said, well, 80% of it is the same. He said there's probably 20% of it that changes with a new quarterback. 10% of that will be some of the stuff that Phillip did, and then 10% of it is going to be completely Matt Ryan. And I think what he's probably thinking about is play action. That's not really, Rivers didn't like to do that a ton. He's more a shotgun guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've seen Ryan's been in a lot of those offenses over the years, and he plays through some of that. I actually asked Kyle Shanahan today about working with Ryan in the past, and Shanahan was saying that one of the things with Ryan was, it's not that the plays change necessarily when you're talking to a guy like that, but somebody who's that veteran and knows their skills that well, you end up as a coach seeing the play differently in how it's going to play out, how you call it in the game. And I think that's where some of the changes will be. But I think you described it well. There's going to be a lot more of the Phillip Rivers stuff in terms of the ball's going to come out quicker. It's going to be more accurate. I think you're going to have a lot more throws in the middle of the field. And then the other stuff that's in there is some of the stuff that Ryan's done in Atlanta that maybe Rivers didn't do as much of.
I would just like to, again, be reminded that Nyheim Hines is on this roster. That's what I want a Colts offense to look like, or at least implement him a little bit more, because it felt like they just completely went away from that, and maybe that was a quarterback preference, because you even laid it out that Winston didn't really like the short throws.
Well, the Nyheim is sort of the canary in the coal mine for the Colts offense, I think, with the quarterback, because with Luck in 18 and with Rivers in 20, he had 63 catches, and in both of those years. And when he had Jacoby or Carson, it was down around 40. The play caller didn't change. Frank Reich didn't decide, I don't want to use Nyheim Hines. The quarterback changed.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest change. And all three of them down here, Frank, Chris, Irsay, have all talked about the need to have Nyheim Hines more involved. And they said Frank knows that. My spin on that a little bit, because they've tried not to bury Carson too much. They've tried to say nice things about him on his way out the door. But if you just look at the numbers, the play caller was the same. The changes were the quarterback. I think that this is going to be a return to Nyheim Hines having a big role in the offense. When he was in Atlanta, they had running backs go over 50 catches over and over again. I think there's a chance Jonathan Taylor is even more of a bigger receiving option than he was in the second half of last season.
Yeah, the one thing that just kind of stood out to me about that whole thing was the lack of the yak numbers, because they were really good in that area. Say what you want about Rivers' arm strength. The Colts were making big plays and big chunk plays because a lot of it was catch and run, where Rivers is so good at ball placement that he was able to put those receivers in a position to succeed, and then it completely went away with last year's offense, it felt like.
Yeah, it's both ball placement and decision making. Mm-hmm. It's when the ball goes to certain places. So the example I always use is something that I had never thought about. It was when I was covering the Saints, and Adrian Peterson was there for like a minute. But while he was there, we were asking him about how he hadn't caught many passes, and he said, well, I've never played with a quarterback who knows how to use running back except for when I was with Brett Favre. And, I mean, that's not really what I thought of with Favre, but, like, having covered Breeze and Rivers now, like, you can just see when the ball goes to a running back early, when it's not just, I don't have anything else, I'm throwing it to him. When he's made his read and he knows the ball has to go there, it's a different thing in terms of how much yardage he has, because the defense hasn't had a chance to adjust to that yet. He's the open receiver. Same thing on crossers, that kind of thing. The ball has to get there at a specific time where the window's open, because windows close in the NFL. So it's both ball placement and it's when the ball gets there, and Wentz struggled with both of those things.
We're talking with Colts insider Joel Erickson from down in West Palm. He's at the NFL owners meetings, and he joins us on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, The Ride with JMV. Let's talk receivers, because a lot of fans upset, and I get that frustration, because it's been a lot of this the last couple of years. Hey, we like the guys we have, and then by the end of the year, you're relying on Ashton Doolin and Dontrell Inman and a bunch of guys that really have no business, for as great stories as they are, they really have no business being your second option as a pass catcher. A lot of veteran free agents still out there now. Obviously, most of the premier guys are already gone, and the Colts have very rarely swam in those waters. It seems obvious that they're going to draft one, probably with that number 42 pick. I mean, gun to my head right now, I think most people feel that way, that would be receiver. Do you think they'll also sign one, or are they also? And that could include T.Y. Hilton, I guess. I know people are looking at it more of an outside hire thing, but Hilton is out there too.
Chris Ballard essentially said that there's going to be some signings here, maybe in the next couple of weeks, right before the draft, after the draft. There's some guys out there, not necessarily. Well, the thing is, though, when he answered that, it was more an answer to a question about, like, secondary depth than it was a question about wide receivers. I think it applies to wide receivers that they could make an addition there. From me looking in, I think there were some deals for both receivers and tight ends that I think you could have maybe paid $1.5 million more and gotten a player that, you could have overpaid a little bit. That's not really Ballard's MO, though. But that's my thing is, like, I might have overpaid a little bit. He doesn't usually do that. They feel like they can find the explosive receiver in the draft. I think one of the other things that Ballard said that was interesting is just he believes very deeply in Reich's offense's ability to get guys open. He didn't say it explicitly. Reich didn't say it explicitly. Irsay didn't necessarily say it explicitly. But there's a thread through here. If you believe in the offense and you believe in some of the young guys, then some of the lack of production, I think, is they're thinking, well, it's part of it is on the quarterback.
Yeah.
My only thing is, okay, Frank's offense gets guys open. What if there are better guys open?
It's a novel concept, right? What if there's somebody better than Ashton Doolin that is wide open running down the field? Yes.
Right. Like what if that person is helping Frank get him open by the way he reads defenses and stuff like that. So there's still a possibility of T.Y. returning they could make another move, but I'm with you. Based on what I heard down here, it feels more like receiver's going to be addressed to the draft.
Okay, yeah. Well, as long as they address it, because I just feel like every general manager has good and bad, and you have to kind of take sometimes the bad with the good. Nobody is perfect, but if there's one area where I just feel like it's almost been a blind spot, Joel, to me. I'm not trying to be like too harsh here or say hot take or anything, but you look at it with Ballard, the way that he's sometimes been defensive about receiver has just been kind of surprising to me, because they could say whatever they want about injury luck, but to go into last year and rely on T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell to be available, and not only that, but to play a significant role in the offense as the 2 and the 3. I just thought that was a really poor plan. I thought that was a really big risk, and of course it ended up blowing up in their face.
Yeah, I think that he would prefer to address that position in the draft. The idea for him, I think, is that Pittman and Campbell, those 2 second-round picks, would have done what a lot of second-round picks. I mean, Pittman is a 1,000-yard receiver, 80-something catches. Pittman's developed into a bona fide, guy for them. But with Campbell, obviously, the injuries, I'm a little bit with you. If he has those injuries and doesn't pan out and you're not going to make a pick, fill the hole with somebody so that you don't, like I said, if Frank gets guys open, it would help if there's a better guy maybe on the other end of those passes.
Let's look defensively. The Ngakoue move, important. You needed a known quality there, I think, in pass rush, and they didn't have that last year as much as they may like Kwity Paye or Dio or anybody else that they have there. But especially considering the fit with his history with Gus Bradley and his defenses, what kind of impact do you expect Ngakoue to have on their defense?
I think it's considerable. Especially just in those passing situations. He had 63 pressures last year, I think. I think the most the Colts had was 38. Somewhere around there. I mean, that's good for Buckner. Buckner's a defensive tackle. He's going to face more double teams. His pressure numbers aren't going to get up where Ngakoue's were. But that's just a huge jump. You're talking about if it's 30 more pressures, that's almost 2 more pressures a game. That's a huge difference. And then I think the fact that he's there and you have to worry about Buckner and Ngakoue, it helps Kwity Paye. It helps Dio Odengbo. It helps those guys develop because they're going to see single blocking. There would be no reason if Ngakoue and Buckner are on the field to block one of these younger guys. It gives them a chance to develop and win one-on-one matchups without having to worry about being chipped, without being worried about all that stuff. And we'll see how they do this year.
Last thing, Joel, one of the big things, just non-Colts related, I mean, I guess it includes the Colts, it includes every team, is the overtime rules in the postseason and both teams getting the chance to touch the ball. I don't think I've never seen your overtime take. If I have seen it, I don't remember what it was. Where do you fit in as far as that's concerned?
I kind of wanted to just play 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I kind of just wanted to play another period. It's like, I don't love like some people have been like, well, the old college rules where you start at the 25. If you do that in the playoffs, the game's never going to end. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that Bills-Chiefs game where they're just firing touchdown passes from the 25 in over and over again till death do us part? Like, there's no way that would work. That I was kind of okay, I guess, a little bit with sudden death, but now I would just rather see both of them get the ball. And I think if you play 10 minutes, the strategy is still like the regular game to me. That's sort of where I'm at. Like, I know it's a long time to play, but they don't care about that. They just added a 17th game. Don't pretend like you care about how long the games last.
Yeah, and it's not like soccer where you have just the human body can only withstand so much, right? You can't play like 3 extra periods in soccer. Eventually you have to go to PKs because everybody's just going to collapse on the field. I think guys, we've seen teams get gassed in overtime, don't get me wrong, but I think guys could make it through 10 minutes.
Well, and in soccer, you have games where it's legitimately hard for anyone to score. So there is the possibility of a soccer game lasting indefinitely just because they can't score enough, or it just keeps tying because scoring doesn't happen as often. There's tons of scoring in the NFL. It keeps happening, And I just think I just would rather see it be defended that way. I hate the new college overtime rules where after 2 overtimes they go to 2-point conversions. That feels insane to me.
Yeah, it gets a little too like circus tenty for me. I don't want it to get too like carnival game. I agree with you there. At Joel A. Erickson on Twitter, IndyStar.com/sports for all the latest and greatest when it comes to the Colts. You can find the Colts Cover 2 podcast as well with Nate Atkins and Joel on iTunes and Spotify. Thanks so much, my man. Get back to that sun porch or wherever you're hammering out everything on the laptop on.
Well, I got to hammer fast because I got to be on a plane later. So thank you. Well, thank you for having me on, though.
That's Joel Erickson. Great stuff from him. And obviously part of the, well, I don't know if I should say part of, I have an IndyStar podcast, which they have me do once a week, which is really cool of them to allow me to do that. And we have Joel on frequently, as well as Nate and all of their other talented writers and sports people. And so I feel like I'm kind of part of the family over there at the Star, even though I'm not actually an employee or anything like that, but have a lot of respect for what Joel does. Really, all those guys on the beat, because it just, especially NFL, man, it just does not end. It never ends. It's just 24/7, 365. People just can't get enough of it. And even I suffer from Colts fatigue. Like on March 29th, I'll be totally honest with you, I would rather not be talking Colts and NFL, but it's just, what are you going to do, right? I mean, we're certainly not going to talk about the trash fire Pacers right now. And it's become this year-round topic where I don't know if 10 years ago or 20 years ago, certainly on sports radio in Indianapolis, you'd be talking Colts. I don't know what Mark Patrick used to do back in the day on NDE, but I would imagine most March 29 shows, if you went back into those archives, you wouldn't find a lot of Colts talk. And now it's constant. It's just all over the headlines. Even there's these epic finishes in the NCAA tournament, and then, oh, hey, guess what? Tarik Glenn, there's always something that pops up even in the middle of these other big moments. And it's wild. It's just Tom Brady unretires during Selection Sunday. I mean, it takes over everything. 239-1070. We'll have some time for calls coming up a little bit later on in the show. Brian Neubert, Gold and Black Illustrated, is going to talk Purdue with us at 4:30 and more into the Colts, their wide receiver room, what Reich, Ballard, and Irsay had to say, and your reaction too. It's The Ride with JMV, 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
The biggest piece to the puzzle is in place.
Matt Ryan and the Colts.
How good is Matt Ryan?
What pieces fall next?
Irsay says all in that this team couldn't do all in.
I don't think they have the weapons enough to be really good.
So what are you going after?
When the puzzle's completed.
The Colts have wide receivers, a definitive need right there at a very high level.
You'll hear about it here on your home for Colts football.
I can sit here, bitch, whine, and moan every day, and you know I will.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
At Gamebridge Fieldhouse, we protect home court.
That's blocked again by Turner.
We battle.
Washington drives, scores, and a foul.
We dig deep.
Nice pass. Brissett finishes.
From tip-off through the final buzzer. It's game time at the Fieldhouse.
It's one of your last chances to cheer on the blue and gold when the Denver Nuggets come to town. Catch the Pacers and Nuggets Wednesday at 7. Get your tickets at Pacers.com. That's Pacers.com. Pacers Nuggets Wednesday at 7.
Hey, Indy. Tim Pearson here, founder of Chattanooga Whiskey, the only Tennessee high malt. Chattanooga Whiskey 91 is an award-winning small batch bourbon crafted from 4 grains, including 3 specialty malts for a distinctly rich and complex character. Drink Chattanooga Whiskey. Enjoy responsibly.
Hi, I'm Sherry Shepherd. You probably know me best as a co-host on The View. More importantly, I'm a mom. I talk to a lot of moms, and I'll tell you what, we all want the best for our babies. But each year, more than 500,000 babies are born prematurely, and this can lead to serious health problems. The good news is that now if you're pregnant or a new mom, you can get easy access to information to keep your baby healthy. It's through a free service called Text for Baby. Pregnant women and new moms get timely, expert health tips sent directly to their cell phones. The tips will help you care for your new child in each important phase of early development. Get Text for Baby. Free messages on your cell phone to help you through your pregnancy and your baby's first year. Just text BABY, B-A-B-Y, to 511-411. That's BABY, B-A-B-Y, to 511-411 for the health of your baby.
There's never been a better time for a cash-out refinance. Apply online today at thehomeloanexpert.com. NMLS number 1326241.
It's Kevin and Query.
Fair to say Mike Woodson fired Dane Fife.
I think a big part of it was philosophical differences between which players should be playing. Younger players versus transfer upperclassmen. Jim Todd and Randy Whitman are spending a lot of time around the Indiana program helping out Mike Woodson, which is fine, except for that they're not officially on staff, and that has created tension among those that are on staff.
Kevin and Query.
Weekday mornings at 7.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. The Ride with JMV.
My vision is to take this team as the first franchise to the Saturn Football League and play against 8-foot gargoyles that run 3.8 speed.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Great stuff from Joel Erickson. Appreciate him joining us. Appreciate you joining us here on the Ride with JMV. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. I'm Derek Schultz filling in at Schultz975 on Twitter. You heard Jay Query's voice. We still do our extremely dumb show, but it's a fun show once a week. QueryandSchultz.com if you want to check that out. Monday nights at 7:30, Comcast 81. YouTube, podcast. We stream it on Twitter, Facebook. A lot of fun to hang with Jake, and a lot of fun to listen to him in the morning with Kevin, and those guys have a lot of fun and do a great job. I'm not sure how I feel about the constant peacock sounds over the last week or so, but luckily with St. Peter's out, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Kyle's on the ones and twos, so no fill-in producer-wise today. I had Josh, I think, the last time that I was in here, but I have to ask you, Kyle, because we're on YouTube Live. Am I allowed to call it the lounge, or does JMV have like
you can call it the lounge?
Okay,
that's
cool.
what it's called. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, like I'm house sitting for JMV. That's kind of how I feel like right now. So this is like straight. Sorry, I'm like sticking my finger in the camera lens. Canon, like this is legit here, right?
We have severely upgraded.
Yeah,
our live stream capabilities. We can do it on the road now when John's,
nice
at a restaurant bar.
Because 3 months ago, it was like, I don't know what it was. It looked like one of those old like flip cameras. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this is good. I mean, if you're watching right now on YouTube Live, you get the full Derek Schultz experience, the rugged handsomeness and the beard and the shoulders. And I've got my nice J. Crew outlet sweater on. So you get to enjoy it. Hi, everybody out there. It's going to sound weird if you're listening in your car right now. You're like, what the hell is this guy doing? Brian Neubert's going to join us here in just a couple of minutes. We're going to talk Purdue with him. Lots of happenings as far as Purdue is concerned, and obviously emerging from the weekend. My family, we just randomly took a weekend trip to Pittsburgh. We had never spent any meaningful time in Pittsburgh, so we're like, hey, my son is 5 years old. His pre-K is on spring break. Let's go to Pittsburgh. So we go to Pittsburgh, and then at the end of Friday night, I had time we got back to the hotel room and put him down. We were watching Purdue, and I guess I shouldn't have felt this way, knowing Purdue sports history and being kind of well aware of that very dark place. But all day Friday, and even throughout that game, it never really crossed my mind that Purdue was going to lose. Like, I just thought, okay, St. Peter's survived the first weekend. They're a cute story. Yeah, they're athletic, but they're super undersized. So everything's going to be fine here. Purdue's going to impose their will on this MAC school, and they're going to move on to the Elite Eight and then take their chances against Carolina East. And of course, it didn't end up going that way. But just a really disappointing finish to what ultimately I think will be remembered as a disappointing season. And it's hard to say that because they won 29 games and they went to the second weekend and they went to the Big Ten tournament final. But when you have the expectations that Purdue had going into that season, and you fall short of those, that's how this is ultimately going to be remembered. The teams that are remembered more fondly are the ones that have runs that come out of nowhere, kind of like the 2019 team, which came a fluke miracle finish against Virginia away from finally breaking through that glass ceiling and making the Final Four. But joining us now to talk Boilers, he has covered them for a long, long time and done it very well. Not trying to make Brian Neubert feel old, but you can catch him on Gold and Black Illustrated, goldandblack.com. And, Brian, you're like 3 days into the offseason, then you wake up to a text from me at like 8:30. So I appreciate you not hitting the ignore button and coming on the show here.
What makes you think I was awake?
Yeah, well, yeah. Good point. It did, I guess, take a while I think I got the reply like mid-morning. So it did take a minute or two. A lot happening, though, with Purdue, right? Usually this is a bit of a wind-down period and the dust settles, but the dust clouds are getting kicked up into the air. Every major program's going through this. The transfer portal is a whole new world, and I want to discuss some of that with you, but kind of a postmortem on 2022. I'm just having a lot of trouble putting a positive spin on it because I think you could have lived with a nondescript 12, 13-point loss to Carolina. That would have been disappointing, but I think you could have lived with that. At least you were in the Elite Eight, and at least it's Carolina. For me, it's just hard to excuse what we saw on Friday night and that performance against St. Peter's.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to put a positive spin on it. I mean, it was what it was, but it was also, I mean, people who were shocked at the way Purdue lost on Saturday or on Friday night, that was what Purdue was all year. I mean, they were really talented. They were obviously capable of much more than they ended up accomplishing, having fallen a game short of a Big Ten regular season title, a game short of a Big Ten tournament title, and then obviously a game short of being a game away from the Final Four. I know talk about the Final Four when they're still 2 games away is still a little bit flawed, but Purdue turned the ball over way too much all year long, and I think as good as they were, and at the end of the day, I mean, you still won 29 games, so talking about them like they're Northwestern is, still a little bit flawed here, even though that's not how the season's going to be remembered. But I think, what Purdue never did was they never closed that little gap between being really, really talented and having all the potential in the world and really knowing how to win on a consistent basis at a high level. And I think a lot went into that, but I think they just, every time they lost, it was turnovers. They just didn't value possessions the way Purdue typically values possessions. They just didn't defend at a level that Purdue normally defends at. They got way better over the final 6 weeks of the season, but they still, had they started that process earlier, they would have been in a much better place when they needed to be. They kind of undercut themselves a lot of the time with not being very good at the foul line. This team had all the big things. It just didn't always have all the little things. And it was a very small gap between, being really, really good enough to win 29 games and being elite and, being able to actually win championships and go to the Final Four. And I think that's what left this season so kind of unfulfilling, kind of disappointing, in the sense that you were so close to so much, but you just weren't mature enough from a basketball perspective to be able to capitalize on it. I mean, I totally get where people are coming from, that this was the season that you had your best chance, but they just had flaws all year long, and those flaws came out in the NCAA tournament.
They just never went away. Honestly. Yeah, it just never really went away. I mean, it reminds me, and look, I know that they weren't super similar, but it reminds me a little bit of the 17-18 team where you had that long winning streak. Remember, they had that disastrous preseason tournament where I think they lost to Western Kentucky or somebody, and then they rattled off however many wins in a row it was and got to number 2 or number 3. But unfortunately, for all the winning that they did, they didn't win the league. They didn't win the league title, tournament title. No Final Four. Not even an Elite Eight. And that's the ultimate disappointment for me, Brian. It still would have been had they, let's say, tied with Wisconsin for the league title and still gone out to St. Peter's. Ultimately, it still would have been a disappointment. But at least you could say, hey, remember that 2022 group because they won the league. They added to that total, and you've got nothing outside of, I guess, being number 1 for a week. You've got nothing really to attach to this team.
Yeah. It is very similar to that season you just mentioned. The difference being that team was loaded with seniors. So I think it maybe stung a little bit more then. This team obviously had more talent than that team. But at the same time, you were beholden to that talent too. And, your 2 best players at the end of the day were sophomores, and you had to ride kind of their ups and downs a little bit too. And both Jaden Ivey and Zach Edey both had real ups and downs. Travion Williams, even as a senior, had some real ups and downs. Some of which you wouldn't really expect from a senior. But, Purdue's best players, sometimes didn't set the best tones for this team. And I think that part of that was youth, part of that was just kind of the natural turbulence of their games, of their personalities, whatever it might be. Some of it was, Purdue's excessive reliance on those guys. You were beholden to their foul shooting. You were beholden to their turnover issues at times. You were beholden to their decision-making, things like that. And that made this a little bit of kind of like a roller coaster ride all year long. It's like as good as they were in Connecticut to start the season, and that's when everybody jumped on the Final Four train and people started booking their airfare to New Orleans. And I think a lot of people overlooked some of the things that, weren't in place at that time, because the question was fairly obvious then is what happens when they can't outscore everyone? And, you didn't really have an answer to that question at that time, nor could you have because Big Ten play hadn't arrived yet. But I think that a lot of the ups and downs were never smoothed out here. And I think, perhaps leadership was a bit of an issue. Experience was maybe a little bit of an issue. For as much as Purdue returned from last season, they returned a lot from a team that didn't win a postseason game last year. They returned a lot of seniors who'd been through a lot of different things, but I don't know if they necessarily had that guy who was sort of that stabilizing influence. They had good, solid people for the most part, but I don't know if they had that sort of natural alpha from a leadership perspective. I think, as I said before, you had to ride the ups and downs of Jaden Ivey, way more ups than downs. But there were downs. You had to ride the ups and downs of Zach Edey. There were more ups and downs, but there were downs. And I think a lot went into this. But, the reality was they just never became a Purdue team. They never really, had they been a little more Purdue-like, I think this, traditionally Purdue-like, valuing the basketball, playing defense, getting loose balls, I think things would have turned out much different for them. But this team was wired very differently from day one.
What's your reaction to the Matt Painter criticism? Because really outside of Arkansas Little Rock, and if you watch the finish of that game, I mean, they were like banking in threes from like 27 feet. It's March, right? So sometimes you just get kind of fluked, and I felt like that was sort of a fluky outcome. But Painter had largely avoided upsets in March. Most of his teams had lost to, the John Shire, Nolan Smith Duke team in 10, the UConn team in 09, that number one Kansas team that kind of ran them off the floor, but still they were a one seed in whatever 17, I think, with the Swanigan team. And then, of course, in the last 2 years, you have North Texas, and then you end up having St. Peter's. Do we now kind of get saddled with this kind of what it was a label that Gene Cady carried for a while? I mean, those 84 to 96 teams, you go back and look, and they were getting knocked out by a double-digit seed seemingly every year. Does Matt Painter now have to live with that moving forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's something that weighs on him. In terms of the criticism, I mean, I think, Purdue's fan base is obviously very, very Final Four hungry. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's good when your fans are engaged and excitable. I think this year, as I mentioned before, I think this was a flawed team from day one, and I think those flaws never got smoothed out. Obviously, the head coach is accountable for all of that. This team never really took on Matt Painter's basketball sensibilities. Why that was, I don't know, but I think that, Purdue's had a lot of bad luck in the NCAA tournament before. This year was not one of those years. This was a team that was capable of a lot more. But I think this year the reaction is a lot more acute because a couple of things. One, I think, that Final Four starvation, from Purdue's fan base, I think reached a fever pitch in November because it seemed like, Purdue was being anointed back then. I mean, there were tons of national media in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. They were all declaring Purdue the best team in the country, only to declare someone else the best team in the country a week later, but never mind that. I think that they were glancing over some issues with that team at that time, but I think Purdue fans generally, everything this year that happened was about the Final Four. That was the post-game conversation after every game, after every win, after every loss. And I think that kind of brought this all to a boiling point. And I also think, this whole season brought in a lot of bandwagoners who were kind of coming in for the big win, so to speak. And I think when they got burned, I think they added to kind of the outcry here. But this is natural. I mean, this is, I think, what every program in college basketball deals with this to some extent. When it's one as passionate about basketball and as Final Four hungry as Purdue's fan base, there's always going to be some really hard feelings. That had ended in the Sweet 16. That had ended to St. Peter's, no less. I think just kind of threw gasoline on the fire. But, I mean, Purdue's got a good program. They've got a good, stable program. They're going to keep churning out good teams. And one has to think sooner or later Purdue's time comes. It's just, I mean, I don't see anything different in Purdue in March, really, than I do at other times. I think, if anything, what maybe this acts as a referendum toward is, the viability of playing through the post as much as Purdue does. Mm-hmm. Purdue has, doesn't really have a meaningful NCAA tournament run to show for that, because the team that got to the Elite Eight was the one out of like the last 8 or 9 that didn't play that way. But as far as this team goes, the Purdue team that lost in the NCAA tournament was the Purdue team that lost 8-9 games prior, and it was a really, really a red flag for Purdue that in a championship situation in the Big Ten tournament title game, after everything turnovers had cost you, it still shows up in that situation. I think that was really a warning sign for Purdue going into the NCAA tournament. One they could just never get out of their system. But, I don't know if it was anything necessarily about Matt Painter in March or anything like that, but that is going to weigh on him, and that is going to follow him around until they break through, because that's kind of the nature of expectations in these jobs.
Brian Neubert, goldenblack.com, joins us. It's The Ride with JMV, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Let's talk about where the team goes from here, because I think the Isaiah Thompson transfer decision came, I guess, a little bit as a surprise, because a lot of times you see guys going to the portal because there's somebody blocking them or there's not minutes to be had, and it looks like there were minutes to be had for Thompson. That said, I never really viewed him as like a starting caliber Big Ten point guard. He can knock down shots. I think he was a useful player. I worried about him physically and defensively, but do you expect Matt Painter to add a transfer to handle those duties next year? Because that was one of the big narratives outside of turnovers and defense was, the point guard play was up and down and really mostly down for a lot of the year.
Yeah, I thought Eric Hunter played really well the second half of the year, and I thought Isaiah Thompson filled a role very well in the first half of the year. Obviously, neither of those guys were necessarily stars.
Yeah.
But I thought early in the season, putting a knockdown shooter next to Jaden Ivey and Travion Williams and their passing and whatnot was a really big deal for Purdue. But, yeah, they could have used probably a little bit more at that position. Yes, they are going to go to the portal. I thought had Isaiah Thompson stayed, I think that they were going to potentially recast him maybe a little bit as somebody you run some offense for, try to get some shots for, maybe use him more as a scorer than a true point guard, so to speak. So I think they were going to go get somebody anyway, but they're definitely now going to go get somebody, because right now the only point guard category player on your roster right now on paper is Braden Smith, and he's a freshman. So they have to get a point guard, and they have to get somebody who can score in the backcourt, because that's also something where you're going to fall off here when Jaden Ivey turns pro. If those two guys are the same guy, great. But I think that if that's two different players, that's fine too. Purdue does now have 2 scholarships to offer, so they're going to have to hit that backcourt pretty hard. I think they've got some good assets in the front court, but they have to make sure they don't fall off a cliff from a shooting perspective, and they got to be able to find somebody who can do something as a playmaker in the backcourt. As far as Isaiah Thompson goes, I think his confidence. He didn't seem like a confident player the second half of the season. I think maybe a fresh start for him somewhere else where he can, he can be one of the team's better players. Things like that can probably benefit him. I think he wasn't exactly a guy fans were terribly nice to here the last couple months, if not the last couple of years, and I think that weighs on guys too. I mean, I think that's the era we live in, but I think that weighs on people. So a fresh start for him might be something he really needs.
Yeah, you have to block it out, but you do have to remember it's 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and you're on it all the time, and you go through the mentions, and there are only so many threads that you can mute. Sometimes you see some stuff that you really don't want to see, and it would be hard. People can be, it's the internet. People can be really mean. I think we know what Jaden Ivey's going to do. I'm assuming Zach Eder is going to be back. I guess he would test the waters and all of that, but are you leaning either way as far as what you think the future might hold for him?
Well, my personal expectation is he'll be back. He'll go through the process, I'm sure. I think he can go to those workouts and he can do some things that people have not seen him do, because I've seen him shoot jump shots, on the practice floor after practice. He can do it. And those are the exact workouts NBA people will put him through. So his decision is going to be like, do I want to develop another year at Purdue, or do I want to develop another year as, maybe a two-way guy in the G League? Do I want to ride buses between Cedar Rapids and, wherever the hell you go in the G League? Or do I want to continue to have, the resources in place that I have at Purdue? I think the thing for him is if he comes back to Purdue, I think you're looking at a guy who might be your preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, depending on some other guys, whether they come back or not. I think that he's a guy who, can be one of the faces of college basketball because he's going to put up such enormous numbers, but also the fact he's such a unique player that people are going to sort of gravitate toward him a little bit. I think nowadays in the NIL era, I mean, if that's reason for a kid to come back, you could conceivably make more money in college than you could make in the G League. And he's got all of Canada to market to. So
yeah,
I think there's some practical considerations here. What it comes down to oftentimes with these guys is, do I want to continue to be in college? Do I want to continue to develop in college? Do I want to continue to go to class, have to worry about my grades, stuff like that? Or do I want to just be a basketball player 100% of the time? And, with his limited background in basketball, I think it would make a lot of sense for him to just play as many games as a relied upon player as he can play. I think it makes all the sense in the world for him to come back, but I've never had to make that decision personally, so I try not to judge. But my personal opinion would be I would expect him to go through a couple workouts and then come back.
Speaking of workouts, and I'll leave you with this, Brian, pro days going on all the last couple of days all over the country. And, David Bell has been a guy that, people are really interested to see where he goes. East Side kid, Warren kid, and then, of course, starred at Purdue. And I know that the combine and the pro day numbers, particularly speed-wise, haven't been exactly eye-popping for him. But why do you envision his future in the NFL and what type of player that he'll be as a pro receiver?
I think, personally, it's easy for me to say this because I've seen him up close, but I think that kid has such a knack for just making things happen, for just making big catches, and just for finding a way to get open, even though he's not the biggest, strongest, fastest, most athletic guy out there. I just think he's a guy who's going to find his way to being a good player. He just strikes me as that guy who slips to the third round because he runs like a 4.65 or whatever it might be. Somebody drafts him. He somehow ends up a Patriot, and he ends up being the best wide receiver in the NFL for a couple of years. I don't think he'll get to that level, but I think he'll be a productive pro just because he has too many intangibles. Now, he has to stay healthy. I think, going back to his high school days, he's had a lot of stuff kind of happen to him. I think he's just got to stay healthy, and I think he's a guy that is going to kind of defy the eyeball test to a certain extent. I don't know if he crushed it at the combine. I don't know if he crushed it at his pro day. I don't know if he'll crush it at his workouts, but I don't know if he should have been expected to be a guy who'd crush it in those places, because he's one of those guys where productivity has always mattered more than measurables. And I know the NFL's got to start somewhere. I know it's a measurables league, but I just think he's too good a football player to not find his way into at least being a guy who hangs around the league for a good period of time and makes some noise to some extent, whether that's just as a contributor, whether that's actually as a standout player for somebody. I just think he's too good of a football player to not make it.
And it sounds cliche to say, well, he's a winner, but man, it really is true. I mean, he won and won and won and won, and I don't think you can underrate that. It's not going to show up on a stopwatch or on a sheet of paper, but I think he's definitely got that going for him too.
Yeah.
At Brian Neubert.
He always just found a way,
Yeah, for sure. On Twitter, at Brian Neubert, goldenblack.com for all of the best Purdue coverage. You've got the podcast rolling on there too, right?
Yeah, we do a podcast every Monday morning, and I started doing a little 10-minute monologue thing into my phone while I was driving home from basketball games that people who are gluttons for punishment seem to like. So there's a lot of stuff on there.
You don't give yourself enough credit. I like monologue Brian Neubert. I'm fine with that. Thanks so much, my man. I appreciate you coming on. Always appreciate you coming on over the years, and thanks for eventually answering that early morning text.
No problem, Derek. Anytime. Good talking to you.
That's Brian Neubert. Great dude, and a guy that I've known for a long time. Fellow East Coast guy. Neubert is a Jersey guy, big Yankees fan, Connecticut guy here, also a Yankees fan. Jimmy Cook is a Yankees fan. Who do you like, Kyle? Are you a baseball guy at all? I mean, I'm barely a baseball guy anymore. I grew up
suburbs of Chicago, so I'm a Cubs fan.
Okay, so you and Dykton are kind of in the same, but he's a Chicago sports guy, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought he was
he's
like
a Bears fan.
Yeah, I thought he was like Bears and White Sox and all that stuff. Were you a Bears fan or no?
No, I really didn't have an NFL team at all.
Oh, really?
I've said the story before, but I've owned one jersey in my entire life for any sport. It was a Peyton Manning jersey.
Wow.
And I wasn't a huge Colts fan. I just loved Manning. But I hated the Bears because I like to be, everyone was a Bears fan.
Sure.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to be a Bears fan. I liked watching Brett Favre. I liked watching Manning, but I didn't really have a team.
How'd you end up here?
College, and then moved down here.
Okay. Are you Butler?
Indiana Wesleyan.
Indiana Wesleyan. Okay.
Yep.
Who was Josh a Butler guy? I'm trying to think of somebody.
I think Josh is.
Brendan King was a Butler guy.
Guy.
Yep. All right. See, I'm trying to keep everybody straight here with the producers and the other fill-ins and the other hosts of all the lineage here. But that fascinates me that you grew up near Chicago and not care about the Bears, because it feels like everybody cares about the Bears either one way or the other out there. But I was kind of like that with UConn. UConn got shoved down my throat 24/7, 365. And I was like, ugh, it's enough about UConn. God, over and over again. Speaking of, we're going to run down some of the headlines when we come back. Also, jump right back into the Colts stuff, 5 o'clock hour. A couple of people have texted me, hey, I want to call. We'll have time for calls in the 5 o'clock hour because we're all done with guests for the rest of the day. 239-1070. We'll get into what Jim Irsay had to say, what Ballard had to say, what Reich had to say, the wide receiver room, the Wentz comments, NFL overtime, all of that stuff when we come back. It's The Ride with JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The biggest piece to the puzzle is in place.
Matt Ryan and the Colts.
How good is Matt Ryan?
What pieces fall next?
Irsay says all in that this team couldn't do all in.
I don't think they have the weapons enough to be really good.
So what are you going after?
When the puzzle's completed,
The Colts have
Wide receivers
a definitive need right there.
at a very high level.
you'll hear about it here on your home for Colts football.
I can sit here, bitch, whine, and moan every day, and you know I will.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
If you missed your favorite show on The Fan today, no worries. Go to 1075thefan.com and click on our blog section to read up on the most discussed topics of the day.
Hey, it's JMV at Ray's Trash Service. They're all about protecting the environment while bringing cost savings to you. Natural resources are going up in price, and landfill space is disappearing. So Ray's is committed to preserving the Hoosier environment and serving Central Indiana with efficient, cost-effective, and responsible waste removal and recycling solutions. They're one of the largest recyclers in the state of Indiana with customer rebates on paper, cardboard, and so much more. Visit raystrash.com to see how they can bring recycling solutions to your organization.
The Fed has raised rates, but it's not too late for you.
There's still time to lock in Golden Oak Lending's low 3.25% rate.
I'm James Hawkins, president of Golden Oak, and I urge you to call now. With home values at all-time highs and Golden Oak Lending's low rates, you can pull more cash out of your home.
Call 317-706-GOLD today to get a free mortgage checkup and find out how much cash you can get. It's more than you think.
That's right. Plus, Golden Oak still has millions of dollars available at near record low rates, and you can skip 2 mortgage payments.
Lock in this low 3.25% rate. And if we can't close your loan, the appraisal is no charge. Call 317-706-GOLD.
Golden Oak Landing cured my blues.
NMLS 114937, 3.25% fixed, 4.361% APR. FHA 15-year mortgage with 20% equity and approved credit.
BetMGM welcomes you with a special offer on the NBA. Simply place a $10 moneyline wager on any game. If either team hits a three-pointer, you'll win $200 in free bets. Just use the bonus code THEFAN200. That's all one word, capital T, capital F, when you make your first bet. Plus, you'll earn BetMGM rewards points that can be redeemed for online bonuses or converted into comps for rooms, restaurants, and more at over 20 MGM resorts nationwide. BetMGM is proud to be an authorized gaming partner of the NBA. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use that bonus code THEFAN200 to win $200 in free bets on your first NBA wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. Indiana only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
Wednesday on Kevin and Query, let's take a look at the Final Four coming up Saturday night in New Orleans. Also, what news came out at the NFL owners' meetings. We'll break it all down for you. 7 a.m. right here on The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Bullish Prince hanging and banging with you until the 8 o'clock hour. Coming up, we have artists such as Living Color and the Fine Young Cannibals right now. Here's Roxette, The Look, 89.9 WROL.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Welcome back. It's The Ride with JMV, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Derek Schultz, filling in for John. House sitting is how I like to look at it. John taking the day. I think he went down to southern Indiana, down to his roots. I'm not sure if he ended up making it to Jasper. I was listening yesterday, and he was talking about going down to a bar in Jasper. I've never been to Jasper. I had a roommate at IU who was really, really into a girl from Jasper. Like he had I think he had like a chem class or something with her, and he was a really smart guy and was really good at chem. And I don't think she was great at chem, but he like purposely sandbagged himself because he wanted her to like. I don't know, he wanted to like be on that level and connect and whatever else, and ultimately ended up not actually going anywhere. But that was the one Jasper person that I remember from IU. There were a couple like Bloomfield and some of those other areas. Sometimes I knew a guy from Ellettsville. So sometimes you'd get that Southern Indiana flavor. But for the most part, and this was like 20 years ago, but when I was at IU, it was just a ton of Chicago and then tri-state kids like me, like Jersey, Long Island, New York, Connecticut. Like there was a lot of that. Like when I came out, I was just expecting it to be like all Midwest people. And I come out and I'm like, yeah, I'm from, Connecticut. Oh yeah, well, I'm from here. And I'm like, you grew up like 20 minutes away from me. This is weird. What are you doing here? And then they'd say, what are you doing here? It's kind of a weird thing. And I know a lot of people complain about that. The East Coast guys at IU. I was one of those people though. But hopefully one that connected with I've made a lot of lifelong Indiana friends. Lebanon, Indiana. Shout out to Lebanon. That's kind of my adopted hometown where I had a lot of roommates and dear friends and did Thanksgivings and Easters and all the holidays that I couldn't make to get back home with my parents. So, near and dear to me with Indiana. 239-1070. We're going to talk Colts and re-rack the headlines and do all of that. But first, let's hop to the phone lines. We haven't had a lot of time to do that today because we've been fairly guest-heavy, but the rest of the way, final hour of the show, it's just you and me at 239-1070. Let's start with Matthew, who's been waiting patiently. He's on line one. Hi, Matthew. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, it's good to hear from you.
Hey, likewise. I didn't really have much to say sports-wise with it being the Colts off-season and whatnot, but I heard you were on, and I just had to call in and say hi to you.
Now, this is Matthew from Maine, correct? Like, we've never actually spoken before, but I'm just putting two and two together here.
Yes, it's me.
Gotcha. I really appreciate you calling. And for those that don't know, and we've been giving like shameless plugs to the Query and Schultz Once a Week show, a lot of the people that still kind of follow along and listen to that are people from the old radio days. But early on in that show, I was like, hey, there's this person, Matthew, who's apparently in Maine, and he like loves the show, and he listens all the time. And we're like, how did you even find us? And it turned out you were just like a Colts fan who stumbled upon the show, right?
Yep.
It's really cool how that worked out. Appreciate your support, and thanks so much for calling in. It's nice to hear from people that have been longtime fans or even short-time fans like Matthew for calling into the show. And we're just trying to. I'm just like everybody else. John's the same way. John, what I've always respected and loved about John and the way that he kind of handles his show is that like everybody's just a friend. That's what they always say in radio. Like you want to connect with people and feel like it's like a barroom conversation. Well, I think JMV is like the epitome of that. Like you just feel like you're hanging out with him. And I've tried to rip that off from from JMV. I don't know if people feel that way about me, but I've always been envious of that connection that he's had with his audience. We'll have some more calls, 5 o'clock hour, and back into the Colts stuff like I promised and re-racking the headlines. 93.5 The Fan and 107.5. It's The Ride with JMV. Thanks so much for listening.
School is in session.
So Matt Ryan's coming in. He's been fine. I don't think he's great. He can't move in an era where you got to be able to move. He is one of those guys that doesn't seem to have aged. Like Phillip Rivers, I thought aged. Now, got to get the guy some weapons. If you don't get him weapons, again, it'll be malpractice. If you cannot get a wide receiver that can run down the field with some speed, then it is malpractice.
Dan Dockage, weekdays noon to 3 on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Big O Tires is locally owned and operated with the lowest price on every tire every day, plus online appointment scheduling and financing made easy. Big O Tires, the team you trust.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kelly. Credit card debt is increasing at record speed. That's great for the big banks and greedy credit card companies, but for the rest of us, it's getting harder and harder just to pay the bills. The good news is home values are skyrocketing and mortgage rates are still near historic lows. There's never been a better time for a cash-out refinance. Our average client received over $54,000 at closing with a simple cash-out refinance. Apply online today at thehomeloanexpert.com. NMLS number 1326241.
Diamonds are April's birthstone, but any time is a good time for diamonds. And when you give the gift of diamonds, it's truly a thrill. Visit Shane Company for stunning gifts. Find jewelry that's so exquisite and beautiful, it'll take her breath away. We've designed gorgeous styles in every price range, including diamond earrings, necklaces, rings, and bracelets. Our diamonds are natural, and since no two are alike, your piece will be one of a kind, a symbol as unique as she is. Shane Company jewelry is crafted to the highest standards, set with diamonds we hand-select for beauty and hand-match for consistency. In fact, we make our jewelry with such care, we're able to offer a free lifetime warranty. Come in and chat with our friendly and knowledgeable team of non-commissioned jewelry consultants. We'll make it fun to find a diamond gift, something solely for her enjoyment that will last forever.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
Hey guys, it's the new year. Are you still struggling with erectile dysfunction? I've yet to meet anyone that enjoys timing those intimate moments around a pill. Well, now you don't have to. The advanced wave technology at Pine Grove Medical Clinic has been shown by Cambridge University and the Cleveland Clinic to restore and even regrow blood vessels. It can improve circulation and eliminate erectile dysfunction. No pills and no side effects. If you're ready to put a stop to your ED, call us in the next 2 minutes and you'll receive a consultation, assessment, and blood flow ultrasound free, plus a special gift that produces immediate results in the bedroom. You're going to love that. Trust me. This is a $600 value, free to callers now. 317-552-1111. That's 317-552-1111. Guys, get rid of your ED and get that spark back. Call Pine Grove Medical Clinic now to qualify. 317-552-1111.
Indy 11 is back for the 2022 season with the home opener on Saturday, April 2nd at 7. Having you there is what makes our game day so special. So come for the fireworks, smoke bombs, ribbon cannons, and a brand new Indy 11 checkered home kit available for purchase at shop.indy11.com. Be a part of Indy 11's Blue Out Blowout. Get your tickets now. Visit indy11.com or download the Indy 11 app. We'll see you at the mic on Saturday, April 2nd. Brought to you by your Central Indiana Honda dealers.
You know, many people my age who went to college, they'll do something great in the future. But I'm doing something great now.
If you like seeing what you accomplish every day, why not make that your career instead of a desk job?
I know a lot of people without any direction. Well, my direction is up while I help build this high-rise.
Your training is free, so you learn while you earn.
My friends finished their degree in 4 years. That's about what it took for us to finish laying down about a dozen new roads.
Careers as a union laborer are rewarding and ready now. As a member of Laborers Local 120, you'll earn good pay and benefits with lots of job choices.
I do pipeline work.
I'm a concrete finisher.
I lay miles and miles of asphalt.
This is Ward Daniels, Business Manager of Laborers Local 120. Joining us can lead to a satisfying career for you or someone you know.
So join us.
Join us.
Join us.
We are now accepting qualified apprentices and journeymen. Visit labors120.com to apply.
Join us live Friday at Ale Emporium in Castleton from 3 to 6 p.m. Join JMV for the Bud Light Mini Hoops Challenge. See you at Ale Emporium in Castleton starting at 3.
Whether your company is still in a basement office or expanding cross-country, Uline will be there on your road to success. Visit uline.com.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
WIBC HD2 W298BB. WIBC HD3 W228CX. Indianapolis.
Soccer Saturday featuring Indy 11. If this is your football, this is your show. Saturday at 9 on The Fan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing tonight? I'd like to welcome to the stage the lyrically acclaimed. I like this young man because when he came out with the phrase, he went from ashy to classic. I like that. All right. So everybody in the house, give a warm round of applause for the notorious
Derek Schultz.
Give it up for him, y'all. Never been as broke as me.
That transition's perfect, right? You hardly noticed that it was anything different. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Derek Schultz, filling in for JMV. He is out for the day. He'll be back tomorrow, and I appreciate John letting me come in here, Todd Meyer, everybody here at Emmis for welcoming me. Just had Knezovich come through, a good buddy of mine for many years, great dude. And it's been great. It's been great to sit back in the chair again and kind of, it's like riding a bike. You get back on, and you just start pedaling, and you hope that, you're not going to fall off. So hopefully we got an hour to go and I don't end up falling off here. 239-1070. I want to take a couple of calls, but first let's re-rack the big headlines today. We've been Colts heavy today, which is weird on March 29th, but with the NFL owners meetings going on in West Palm Beach, there was a lot said over the last 24 to 36 hours where we heard from Frank Reich and Chris Ballard yesterday about Wentz, about Matt Ryan, about the wide receivers. Today, we heard from Jim Irsay about Wentz, about Matt Ryan, etc. And a lot of interesting quotes in there, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. But the other thing, kind of nationally speaking, that was the big emerging storyline of the NFL owners meeting was the change in postseason overtime, where now you're going to both teams getting to possess the ball. And obviously you didn't have that before because, walk-off touchdown, kind of like what we saw with what happened with the Bills and Patriots in that AFC Championship game from a couple of years ago, where suddenly they win the coin toss and they march down the field and they score. But then again, we saw the opposite end of that, where the Chiefs and Bengals AFC Championship game again, and Kansas City wins the toss, turns the ball over, Cincinnati marches down, kicks the field goal, goes to the Super Bowl. So I know that people differ in their viewpoints about overtime. We had Joel Erickson on earlier today who said, I would just like to do a timed 10 minutes, not sudden death, just let's just play an extra frame. And I think that's been the best solution. That's what I would go with. But this is better than what you had before. I just kind of want to take the coin toss element, not out of it per se, but just really lessen the impact of the actual coin toss, which I think they've done over the years. But still, it's not perfect, but it's better than I think what we used to have. Pacers more competitive. They fall to Atlanta 132-123. Most losses since '89. It's a positive thing. You have to grin and bear it the next 2 weeks. It's like a train wreck. Don't look at the flames, and it's going to be smoldering for a while here. But as long as the Pacers get through the next 2 weeks, you tack on 7 more losses, it's the best thing moving forward for them to have just bottomed out, and that is really what they're doing here. Now, last night's game, not a great example of that. They were more competitive, like I said, but it's hard. It's hard to go through this. No one said it's easy. When I was arguing that the Pacers should, quote-unquote, tank, and what I mean by not intentionally lose, but, tear it down, I was bracing for this, knowing that this was going to happen because I felt like this was the best path forward than trying to sneak into the play-in round and having a nondescript kind of exit from that. So I still think long-term this is the right move for the Pacers, but that doesn't make it any easier in the short term. Isaiah Thompson entering the transfer portal for Purdue. 2 open scholarships now for Matt Painter. A bit of a surprise there, unlike what's happened with IU, where I think he kind of knew that a lot of those guys were going to end up moving on. Maybe Dane Fife was a little bit of a surprise, from the coaching staff. And then UConn reaching their 14th straight Final Four. They win over top seed NC State in a double overtime. Throw a great game. And, 14 straight Final Fours. I know it's UConn and you just expect it, but that's just an incredible level of consistency there. But they're something like 6 years without a title. I think, if I'm not mistaken, their last title was won here when they beat Syracuse. I was at that game. 2016, I think. So they've made a bunch of Final Fours, but that hasn't resulted in a title over the last couple of years. Get back into the Colts conversation, but first, let's hop on the phone lines. In fact, Cameron wants to talk about overtime rules, which I was interested in discussing with you guys. Hi, Cam. How are you?
Happy hello here from Broad Ripple. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, right there on the northeastern side of Midtown.
Oh yeah, near the Pat McAfee Swim Club, allegedly.
There you go.
Well, I thought it was worth mentioning. I haven't heard it said anywhere on radio shows or the talking heads on national TV, but with these new overtime rules, the defense can now win a game in overtime by just forcing a turnover. The only way that could have happened with the older rules is if the first team got the ball and kicked a field goal. But now, first team scores a touchdown. Second team gets the ball. That first team that already scored, their defense can just turn the ball over and game over. So all these former defensive players have been whining about how defense just needs to do their job and stop the team from scoring. Defense can now do their job and end the game on one play.
Yeah, I had not thought about it that way. I guess you want to limit the complaints and limit the whining, and maybe that'll end up limiting the whining. At the end of the day, I just think giving both teams the chance, okay, you had a chance to score, go score. If you don't, you don't. And then if you get on defense, you got to stop them if you didn't score, et cetera. I think that's just, you wanted to level the playing field where it wasn't just about heads and tails, especially when you had a hot offense like that Patriots team in 2018 or that kind of game where whoever was going to get the ball was going to ultimately end up winning. And that's really what I'm in favor of. And I actually kind of like the fact that it's just postseason because then, I don't know, maybe there could be some trial and error here. We can see how it goes, and then we can adjust as we go, as we keep adjusting, it seems, the NFL overtime rules.
Yeah, and the whole 10 minutes thing, I don't think the players would really be in favor of that just because of injuries and
I understand.
And all that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the most fair, but probably not the most safe.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely a fair point, Cam, and thanks for calling us from Broad Ripple. That the health aspect of it, bodies breaking down, being more injury prone. That said, 10 minutes. Could you make it through 10 minutes and gut it out? I think largely you could. It's not like soccer. I used to be like super anti penalty kicks and thought that it was a really just hilariously stupid way to determine an outcome. But at the end of all of that, when you've been running up and down the field that long and just the pure, I think the human body has a certain threshold that you can't cross. And so PKs to me are not a great solution, but they're the only solution. And in the NFL, obviously with the physicality and the collisions every play, it's tough to ask for 10 more minutes. But to me, that would be that's the least sexy, but I think that's the ideal solution. What would you do with that, Kyle?
I like the 10 minutes. The players would never agree to it. And I don't know, did the players have to agree to this? I think this was just the NFL rule change. I don't know if you have to get approved. I'm
pretty sure the owners just vote on it, and then if it votes, it passes, right? It's not like something that's collectively bargained, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that.
You brought up soccer and PKs. You follow soccer? Are you a soccer fan?
I am a huge soccer noob, honestly. I like to pretend I'm into it when it gets, like I follow for the most part, like I know that the U.S. men's national team is on the cusp of clinching.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Are we in the World Cup? I saw people tweeting about it the other night. I couldn't tell. Are we in the World Cup now?
Apparently, if they lose to, is it Costa Rica who they play tomorrow? I think it's Costa Rica. If they lose to Costa Rica by 6 goals, then they fall into the... Again, soccer noob, full disclosure. So please don't scream at me from your car if I get this wrong. If I'm not mistaken, the top 2 from the table in CONCACAF automatically go. And then there's a third spot, and there's a play-in for that third spot, right? The third and fourth teams play each other, and then the winner is the third team that goes.
Greg Rakestraw.
Yeah. I hope that that's right. I'm actually almost kind of like cringing and embarrassed for myself because I'm only like 50% sure that that's right, and I don't want to embarrass myself here because like I said, soccer noob, but I think that's how it goes. So if they were to lose by a substantial margin in tomorrow's game, then they would fall to that third spot and then have to play their way back in.
So most likely we're in.
Yes.
You're not going to lose by 6 goals, right? You just play.
I don't know, though. With U.S. men's national team, it's kind of like Purdue sports, where you say, well, there's no way this is going to happen. And then, the wire snaps and the piano falls on your head. It just feels like whatever is the worst possible outcome or worst case bad luck scenario that's out there that could happen, it ends up happening, unfortunately. But it would be great to be back in the World Cup and get to go out and watch the games, and I'm all for supporting that. And I love watching live soccer. I went to Columbus to watch their game against, I think it was El Salvador. That was back in October. Beautiful lower.com field. They have this soccer-only facility in Columbus. It's gorgeous. And it was an amazing atmosphere. It was kind of my first post-COVID full building sporting event, and it was nice. I forgot how much I missed to be in a full sports arena packed with a ton of people kind of at full throat there for a big match. But yeah, there you go. There's 5 minutes of soccer talk at 5:15.
Isn't the next World Cup in winter? I don't think it's in the summer.
Well, is it Qatar? Am I saying that right?
Qatar.
Yeah,
Qatar,
but it's like 100 billion degrees all the time, right? So you kind of have to play it that way?
Next November, or this November, 2022.
Okay. Yeah, see, like we're you and I are like the two least qualified people to be discussing this.
If Greg Rakestraw was able to listen right now from wherever he's vacationing, he would be cringing.
Rake would
probably be calling
know.
in.
Rake would know. Let's get into some of this Colts stuff as far as the quotes and all of that from Jim Irsay and even from Ballard and Wright, because I think some of the stuff from yesterday, I don't know. I did listen to a good chunk of JMV yesterday, so he wasn't particularly talking about a lot of this stuff when I was listening. So if he already kind of went over what Reich and Ballard had to say, I don't want to just rehash that too much. But the Irsay stuff is definitely interesting because Kyle and I were talking about this before the show where Irsay mentioned, as far as looking back at their quarterback plan, that they were looking at a younger quarterback and trading for one, and one that would cost 2 ones. And then he made a mention of maybe another young quarterback being in that mix. So the conventional wisdom was the guy that would cost 2 ones and that would potentially be traded was Kyler Murray. I had a tweet from earlier that said, well, maybe the other younger quarterback they were talking about was Daniel Jones of the Giants. I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe Daniel Jones wouldn't cost 2 ones. That'd be a situation where the Giants were kind of selling a little bit low on him because he's left a lot to be desired as an NFL starter so far. But interesting to think that the Colts were going to turn over every stone, as they should. Should always pursue trades. If you think a trade was available, they clearly did not have a plan beyond let's get rid of Carson Wentz. And that's a dangerous and scary place to be when you don't have a backup plan. You don't have a parachute when you're jumping out of the plane. And that's essentially what happened here with the Colts. So they even admitted, Chris Ballard said yesterday, hey, we got kind of lucky that we ended up swinging this deal for Matt Ryan because there was a lot of unknown out there. I mean, guess what the conversation would be if Marcus Mariota was their quarterback right now, who I don't think has ever been good. And instead, he ends up going to Atlanta because they move on from Matt Ryan or Jameis Winston, who I was a little higher on, but has some skeletons in the closet, certainly, and has some erratic play during his career. Not that Matt Ryan is a slam dunk sure thing, but I think all things considered, you ended up okay on that end, especially when you consider you're swapping out Wentz essentially for Ryan, and you gained a pick. You get what's going to turn into a 2, assuming that Wentz stays healthy and plays 70% of the snaps. Now we get to watch snap counts instead of Philly watching us here in Indy for next year. You're going to get a number 2 out of that. And I think that's going to end up being a good trade-off considering where the Colts were. Now, it's not a good trade-off in the grand scheme because you gave up a 1 for Wentz, but all things considered, I think that's a good save from this front office to end up getting there. But the biggest thing for Irsay, and I understand I'm getting this way too with the stuff with Wentz, like let's just go ahead and move on, and hopefully this is the last thing that we have to discuss when it comes to Wentz, but he pulled no punches with what he had to say about Carson today. In fact, I had talked about Zach Kiefer lifting that quote from Irsay, and it's damning. Here it is. Quote, for us, it was just something that we had to move away from as a franchise. It was very obvious. As for Matt Ryan, extremely grateful to the football gods, so to speak, regarding where we were compared to where we are. Now, he's saying where we were like post-Wentz when they had no quarterback and no quarterback plan. So that's not the final dig at Wentz there. But, you wondered if this thing was personal certainly there was on-the-field limitations there with Wentz. In the last 6 games, he became a liability. Really, the last 6 weeks, he ranged from non-factor to disaster, and that's not what you want in crunch time of the season. You want your quarterback to matter in the outcome in a positive way, and really outside of one drive in Arizona, Wentz didn't result in a lot of positive things for them. But just with the way that Irsay has been so outspoken about how he feels about Wentz falling short, I think it lends credence to those that believe there was the personal attachment here or personal letdown. And I don't want to rehash this whole thing. Is it the vaccine decision? Whatever. It's over. We're done. He's in Washington now. Everybody's happy. Let's move on. But that quote, if that is indeed, and I'm assuming it will be, closing the book on the Carson Wentz era, if you even want to call it that, here in Indianapolis, that's a pretty damning quote about how the team owner felt about moving on from a guy that they were originally really excited about. At least they said they were excited about when they acquired him last year. 239-1070. More calls when we come back. This Colts wide receiver room, I'm frustrated. You're frustrated, I think, too. We're going to talk about that when we return. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. It's The Ride with JMV.
It's Kevin and Query.
Fair to say Mike Woodson fired Dane Fife.
I think a big part of it was philosophical differences between which players should be playing. Younger players versus transfer upperclassmen. Jim Todd and Randy Whitman are spending a lot of time around the Indiana program helping out Mike Woodson, which is fine, except for that they're not officially on staff, and that has created tension among those that are on staff.
Kevin and Query.
Weekday mornings at 7
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Big O Tires is locally owned and operated with the lowest price on every tire every day, plus online appointment scheduling and financing made easy. Big O Tires, the team you trust.
A while back, we at AmericanEagle.com were asked to build the e-commerce site of a major candy distributor. With the need for a website that could take into account everything from shipping times to local weather, because, candy melts, the task was not like taking candy from a baby. Fortunately, we live for a good digital challenge and free bonbons. So we got to work on a slew of complex integrations, including a shipping algorithm that factored in variables like distance, speed, and location. The website even let the end customer personalize their candy for special events, like weddings or, major website launches. When all was said and done, our client enjoyed a significant increase in traffic, which we were also well prepared for, and an increase in average order size. A sweet result indeed. For complex e-commerce sites, digital marketing, UX, and more, talk to the experts at AmericanEagle.com. Don't just grow, soar.
Bowling, 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 keep them balls a-rolling. Bowling, bowling, bowling. Royal Pin.
Are you looking to stay cool this summer and have fun with your family and friends? Call Royal Pin Entertainment at 465-8484 to join a summer league today. Summer leagues are fun and affordable and last only a short time. If you're going to bowl this summer, bowl at a Royal Pin Entertainment Center. Call 465-8484 or go to royalpin.com to join a league today. Grab your friends and stop in your favorite Royal Pin Entertainment Center for open play. Reserve your lanes by the hour at royalpin.com. Come bowling this summer and have the time of your life. Call 465-8484 or go to royalpin.com.
Royal Pin, bowling, bowling. Royal Pin, bowling.
Ready to save more on your mobile bill? With Spectrum Mobile, get unlimited data and nationwide 5G for just $29.99 per month when you get 2 or more lines. All with no contracts, added taxes, or hidden fees. And now for a limited time, you can save up to $300 on the new Samsung Galaxy S22 series. This is the epic new smartphone you've been waiting for. Visit SpectrumMobile.com today for details. Offer valid for new customers on 2 or more unlimited lines. Spectrum Internet required. Subject to change. Visit SpectrumMobile.com for offer details.
Tavern Tour 22, brought to you by Evan Williams, continues Thursday at the Dugout on Virginia Avenue. Join JMV this Thursday from 3 to 6 at the Dugout Tavern. Tour 22.
The biggest piece to the puzzle is in place.
Matt Ryan and the Colts.
How good is Matt Ryan?
What pieces fall next?
Irsay says all in. This team couldn't do all in.
I don't think they have the weapons enough to be really good.
So what are you going after?
When the puzzle's completed,
The Colts have
Wide receivers
a definitive need right there.
at a very high level.
you'll hear about it here on your home for Colts football.
I can sit here, bitch, whine, and moan every day, and you know I will.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan. The Ride with JMV.
Say, man, you got a joint? No, not on me, man. It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
It's cold and miserable outside, so let's cheer everybody up, jam a little bit. It's The Ride with JMV, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. I'm Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us. A couple of tweets about NFL overtime and some other topics that we've jumped into here at Schultz975. This from Alex, and he's 100% right here. I can't wait until both teams get touchdowns in overtime, and then the winning team kicks a field goal, and people say, well, wait a minute. The winning team got the ball twice, and the other team only got it once. I think each team should get it twice. Yeah, look, again, not a perfect solution, right? We keep trying to edit what we're going to do here with overtime, and we keep adding things, subtracting things. I think a lot of it is kind of silly. I like guaranteeing both teams get the ball once. I do. So if you're going to look at it that way, optimistically, I think that's the right call. To me, it'd just be a 10-minute extra period, but both teams getting it, fine. Whatever. I'm not losing sleep over it. I don't think it's so, broken that it needed to be fixed, but if you're going to fix it in this way, or I guess tweak it in this way, fine. But kind of like what we do with NCAA tournament expansion, suddenly you go to 96 teams, then the 97 team complains. There's always going to be complaints. There's never going to be a perfect way to determine this. I'm really appreciative of Joe Galt. Joe's a great dude. Known Joe for a long time. Producer for JMV, in fact, back in the early days when he was on NDE. Here it is, Kyle. Top 3 teams from CONCACAF advance. If the Americans lose, they'll be tied with Costa Rica, but they would advance on goal differential unless Costa Rica wins by 6 goals. The 4th place team actually goes to a playoff against the Oceania region, which would be New Zealand. So there we go. We sorted that whole. See, I thought it was top 3. Or top 2. It's actually top 3. So they still haven't completely clinched, but they've basically clinched, barring something unforeseen. I think that's where we are. Yeah, I still needed more clarity with that whole thing. This from Gary. I miss hearing you on the radio. Thanks, man. And it's been great. Texts and tweets and all of that to hear from some of you guys about filling in. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to get the chance to be in the saddle again and do this. And I'm really appreciative, especially of JMV, for allowing it to happen. 239-1070. Charlie's been waiting patiently. I've always loved that name, Charlie or Chuck or whatever else. Charles. I like all the variations of your name. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, buddy, you have no idea how many variations of the name there are. Charlie Brown, Charlie Chaplin. There are all. Charlie's very, very nicknamey, right?
No, you're right. And now you've got girls. It's like a short name for Charlotte, right? That's kind of been the hot trend for girl names, too.
Yeah. I think there's somebody in the family that did that, and God help me, I can't remember who it is. But I heard the fish re-entry music. It's like you guys knew where I was going with this call, right?
Yeah, well, we took a couple of tweets and we got some requests, so that's kind of why we went down the fish road there.
Just coincidence. I told your boy Kyle that I was calling about the concert series this summer. I know you're a big fish guy, or I assume you are. I saw you annoy Query on a video you'd posted, I think last summer at some point. You guys were traveling somewhere.
Yeah.
And you were trying to get him to appreciate you enjoy myself, I think, and he just wasn't digging it. But, I'm going to be there. June was wondering if you were going to be on lot, if I was going to see you there this summer, and what your favorite fish tune was. I'm going to have my food truck there, so.
Yeah, I absolutely need to do that, Charlie. I'll make a full disclosure here. While I am a fish fan, I am not a live music guy. I'm not a concert guy. I should say I love live music. I mean, if you're going to listen to Fish, you don't listen to the studio stuff. Really, you listen to the live stuff. But I just have always felt kind of awkward at concerts. I don't know I think I'm just weird. I don't know what it is. My parents are huge concert people. And even into their late 60s, we're going, like, my parents went to see Bruno Mars at the Fieldhouse a couple of years ago, and they're like 70. And I just never, and I went to a ton of concerts and you know, like the concert place. So we go to the Garden in New York, and I saw Billy Joel New Year's Eve, 99 into 2000. And I've seen Elton John, I've lost count, 15 times, something like that. Always with my parents because they take us to these concerts. And the bug never bit me. I saw Fish the last time I saw Fish and they were here was in 2016 at Deer Creek. And it was I think it was only a one-night show. You know, did they play 2 nights? They played 3 nights this past year. And I had some friends that went and I didn't go. And when I saw the set list, I was really upset that I didn't go. The song that first hooked me on Fish was Harry Hood off of the 2-disc Alive One set, where I think disc 1 was red and disc 2 was green. And I was in high school. It was 98 or 99, something. It was the late 90s. And I worked at the stock room at an American Eagle in the Trumbull Mall. And it was like the best job that I ever had because it was me and we had 2 male managers and then everybody else, you know, I was a 16-year-old guy and everybody else in there was high school age girls. So I was like, oh my God, like this is awesome. And of course I was too scared to talk to anybody because I was a dork, whatever. But they allowed us a boombox back there and it had a 6 CD changer, which was at the time, it was like, whoa, CD changer. And the other guy that I worked with back there, Chris, who was the assistant manager and he helped run the stock room, he'd bring in CDs all the time. And he brought in Fish, you know, the 2 discs. And I was like, what is this? And we used to listen to it all the time. And that's what kind of, that's what hooked me on it. But there are, you know, I would stick with a lot of the popular ones. I like to jam to Fluffhead. If we're going for a little bit of a deeper cut, and I kind of heard this randomly on a playlist that I was on, but I kind of like Meat Stick. Kind of a weird song to like, I guess, but that would be one of the other ones that I enjoy there. I mean, Chuck Does Torture. I mean, there are a lot. I like a lot of the older stuff that they ended up playing, but not the biggest live music guy. 239-1070. Oh, no. Kyle, we're going to have to take more soccer calls. Graham, are you going to clarify this for us? Because I feel bad. Like, I didn't mean to go down the rabbit hole here with soccer because we're 2 very unqualified people to talk soccer here, but maybe you can lay this out. Like, give us kind of the Cliff's Notes version of how this is going to go here for Team USA.
Right. And first off, I just wanted to say, like, avid JMV listener, it's first of all, you're incredible, and really just wanted to say I really appreciate you bringing it up in the first place, because I think that for a lot of people it doesn't get brought up a whole often. But just to kind of break it down, so yeah, tonight is really the big game, as it were. So USA is sitting pretty at second right now, ahead of Mexico, who has the same number of points because of goal differential. But basically, it's like we want to win, obviously, tonight to kind of cement our place in there and just kind of have some positive momentum going into the World Cup. This team has been, as of recent, a little bit inconsistent. You know, injuries coming throughout the roster, but Christian Pulisic, Captain America, literally had the game of his life, had a hat trick the last game against Panama, which was huge.
Yeah, I saw that. And exciting to have that level of star because, you know, obviously USA hasn't had that a whole heck of a lot. I mean, I guess you had, you know, Landon Donovan, who was a nice player, Clint Dempsey, you know, guys like that, but maybe not that level of star. So if they do win, are they at the very least, are they guaranteed to be part of that top 3 that would go on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if they win, so I believe, and I'd have to look back through the standings, I believe Canada has like 25 points, that USA and Mexico have like 23 points. So if we win the game, we get 3 points, we're guaranteed a spot at the World Cup.
And then after that, when they actually do the World Cup, does it matter where you finished in the table of CONCACAF, or is it just a complete blind draw?
I believe it's a blind draw, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I believe it's an equal playing field throughout.
That's what I thought, but I was going to ask you because I didn't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's kind of what they do with Champions League football, basically a ball draw, and it's just kind of like you kind of get put where you are, and you hope and pray that you don't get put in a group with like Germany, Portugal, and etc.
The so-called group of death. I remember the 2006 World Cup. It was like Italy, Czech Republic, and I think maybe Ghana. And yeah, it was not good. So thanks, Graham. Thanks for clarifying that for us. I'm just at the end of the day, I like sports that feel like an event, like that feel important, for lack of a better term. And with the U.S. men's national team and going to that game in Columbus, it was an amazing experience. Like, it was just I'm there with three big soccer guys, like John Cooter of the Indy 11, and Rakestraw was with me, and we went all the way over there, and Trey Higdon, who used to run their social media and now has moved on to other things. So I'm there with like three hardcore soccer guys in a stadium full of hardcore soccer people. And I'm just there to kind of enjoy the whole event back in October, and it was a ton of fun. I had to have some of them explain to me exactly what was going on all the time because, like I said, I was a noob, but really enjoyed the whole thing. 239-1070, more calls, more on the Colts. Also, speaking of the Colts, something else that just kind of flew under the radar today, a new addition to the Ring of Honor, and some people have been clamoring for this person for a long time. We'll tell you who that is when we come back. It's The Ride with JMV. Derek Schultz filling in on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It's Kevin and Query.
Jacob Tamme, former Colts tight end and teammate of Matt Ryan.
The thing I loved about Matt was it was like a seamless transition. I'm not saying Matt and Peyton are the same player, but I am saying it's the same feel. The guy's a leader. You go in the locker room and you don't ever have to question if the quarterback is going to be ready to play or is going to be doing everything he can to have the entire organization on point.
Kevin and Query.
Weekday mornings at 7
on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
If you love listening to our shows, then you've got to follow us on our social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Search 107.5 The Fan and share your opinions with us on our posts.
Could taxes be dragging down your portfolio? Join Edelman Financial Engines today at 3 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern for our brand new virtual event, 6 Tax Smart Investing Strategies. We'll show you why tax-efficient investing makes a big difference and how to make it part of your overall wealth management plan. Register now at planefe.com. That's planefe.com to learn about tax drag and how you can help overcome it. See how tax loss harvesting can help you offset capital gains and find out how to make the most of tax-advantaged accounts for retirement, education, and healthcare. Register now and you'll also get a free retirement review with one of our experienced wealth planners. That's an $800 value. Join us for this special virtual event, 6 Tax Smart Investing Strategies, today at 3 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern. And you'll get a free retirement review by registering now at planefe.com. That's planefe.com. Edelman Financial Engines. From here forward.
BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, unleashes the spirit of Las Vegas with BetMGM rewards. Every time you make a wager at BetMGM, you can earn BetMGM rewards points that you can redeem for online bonus credits like free bets and risk-free tokens. Planning a trip to Vegas? You can also convert your BetMGM points into MGM rewards points that you can use towards dining, shows, and hotel rooms at over 20 MGM Resorts properties located on the Las Vegas Strip and nationwide. BetMGM Rewards is sports betting's premier loyalty program featuring exclusive offers, incredible experiences, and valuable perks when you wager on the BetMGM app. Sign up with BetMGM or log on today to get an even bigger piece of the action with BetMGM Rewards. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Indiana only. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
Start a new career with a job that keeps your community safe. The Marion County Sheriff, Carrie Forrestal, is hiring detention deputies to work in the brand new Community Justice Center. You'll supervise and guard offenders, making Marion County a better place to live. Starting pay begins at around $40,000 a year with a $5,000 signing bonus. Enjoy great benefits like complete health coverage and pension plan. Start your career as a detention deputy and earn the respect of your community. Apply today at joinmcso.org. racetrash.indy.gov.
Hey, it's JMV. Race Trash Services, the largest independent recycling and waste solutions provider in the Indianapolis area, and right now, they're looking for great people to join the team. Ray's is a family-operated business and has been providing Central Indiana with industry-leading recycling and waste disposal solutions since 1965. They focus a lot on the culture to make it a great place to work. Go to racetrash.com to see the career opportunities waiting for you. That's racetrash.com today. Ray's, your recycling and waste solutions partner.
Join me tomorrow. I've got Ryan Burr, who will just be talking. He'll give you some golf bets and some Final Four bets. Of course, Seth Greenberg's going to break it down like nobody else. Join us tomorrow, noon to 3.
The Ride with JMV.
What did you say? I said we need a water break. You need a water break. Water is for cowards. Water makes you weak. Water is for washing blood off that uniform, and you don't get no blood on my uniform. Boy, you must be outside your mind.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Thanks a lot to Kyle Udemark for answering all my texts today. Hey, what's the Wi-Fi password? Can I use one of the studios? What time are you going to be here? I try not to be too needy as a fill-in because I don't want, you and Josh and Eddie and Jimmy and anybody else who produces here, one of the many talented producers that we have here at MS, to hate the days that I fill in. All I ask is that you look up like Group Home, Living Proof, and old like hip-hop tracks that we can do for the ins and outs, and maybe occasionally some Fish songs as well to end up mixing in there. I had mentioned a Colt for the Ring of Honor, and they're kind of turning this into a yearly thing, and luckily they've had somebody every year to do, like Robert Mathis this past year. I think Reggie Wayne was the year before that. Peyton Manning was somewhere in there. Edge was some in there. Tarik Glenn is going to be the next member of the Colts Ring of Honor, and a deserved honor for Tarik Glenn. His last game was the Super Bowl win over the Bears. 10-year pro, all 10 of those years here. I had a buddy in college, a huge Colts fan. I'll just say it's Smock. And he always complained about Tarik Glenn's false starts. And he was just like his punching bag. Oh, Tarik Glenn again, false start, whatever. Really great player, though, at his peak, and a 3-time Pro Bowl player and a deserved Ring of Honor. One thing that surprises me a little bit, though, Ray Donaldson was a really good player and a really good offensive lineman for the Colts, and he's not in the Ring of Honor. And I think it's really kind of hard. Offensive line is one of those things that's hard to compare because there aren't counting stats that go into that. So, was Ray Donaldson a better player than Tarik? I don't know. I don't know who was a better player, but if you just go off of accolades, Donaldson hasn't beat him, especially since he left here. I think he went to Seattle, I think, after the Colts, and then went to a couple of more Pro Bowls. Had a really nice career, and I always felt like he should have been included. Chris Hinton is in there, and I always kind of felt like Donaldson should be part of that too, but Tarik Glenn deserves to be in there. A guy that I always felt like deserved to be in there, and people have given me hell about this, but I firmly believe this, because to me the Ring of Honor is not like a Hall of Fame. A Hall of Fame, you need to reach a certain level of a player to be in the Hall of Fame. To me, the Ring of Honor is who did the fan base love and revere the most? Like, as good as Reggie Wayne was, the fan base reveres Reggie Wayne. Now, Reggie Wayne you could put in the Ring of Honor just based on him as a player, but also he was beloved by this fan base. Marvin Harrison's more in there because he was a great player. I'm not sure Marvin Harrison was really beloved by a majority of the fan base because he was always kind of a bit of an unknown, to say the least, when you look at some of his history there in Philly, and there was always this cloud of, who is he? Whereas we really got to know kind of Reggie Wayne. I think Bob Sanders should be there. And people say, well, he's too short of a window. He didn't play long enough, whatever else. Look, I don't disagree. It was a very short window. But in that short window, Bob Sanders was the second most popular Colt. I would actually argue, and if you were here in this town after the win over the Bears in the Super Bowl, if you were here in the winter and spring of 2007, I think in some circles he was even a more popular player than Peyton. And the next year, he ended up being the Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. 2007 was his best and really last healthy season. And I did an event at Castleton Mall at the Macy's, and it was like Perry Ellis or something like that. And they asked me to MC this event for Bob Sanders, and he was autographing pictures of himself, and I think I wanted to sell ties. I don't even know. I was like, however old I was, 25, 26 years old, and they're like, hey, we want you to MC this event. I was like, okay, and it's going to be with Bob Sanders. And I just remember the crowd was ridiculous. Like, I'm very rarely uncomfortable getting in front of people and all that. Like, that's always kind of come naturally to me. Like, I don't have that public speaking fear. But with that, like, it was borderline uncomfortable with the amount of people that were there. And that was after that 2007 season, so right kind of in that window, and Bob Sanders was just hugely popular. And I've always felt like he should be in the Ring of Honor. And I don't know, a lot of people disagree with that. They think it lessens the other people. But if you really look at that Ring of Honor, in those early years, they needed people to populate it. So, no offense to Harbaugh and Captain Comeback and the Cardiac Colts in 95, the whole deal. But, if you really look pound for pound, would Jim Harbaugh have been in the Ring of Honor in 2015 as opposed to 1990? No, probably not. Even somebody like Bill Brooks, who's a great guy, who I like very much, and, obviously is still involved in broadcasting. You hear him on the postgame show with my buddy Rake. Would he be in there, considering the threshold that has been raised since then? Probably one of the only people that would be in there of the previous Ring of Honor members would be Chris Hinton, because he was a great elite level NFL player, and you wouldn't ever say that about Harbaugh, as good as his career was, and you wouldn't ever say that about Bill Brooks. So good for Tarik Glenn. I'll be looking forward to that. The Ring of Honor ceremony thing has been kind of one of my favorites, and it makes me feel really, really old, because then you're like, wow, like I'm old enough where I remember, in some cases, I remember where this guy was drafted, and now here we are in the Ring of Honor, and here he is getting inducted into that. 239-1070. Back to the phone lines. A lot of you have been chiming in about the NFL OT rule, and that's what Phil wants to talk about next on line 2. Hi, Phil. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be with you. Thank you for taking the call. I just wonder on this overtime rule, if the Buffalo Bills actually stop the Kansas City Chiefs in those 13 seconds and don't allow the Chiefs to kick the field goal to tie to put it into overtime, are we even talking about this? I don't think so, but I don't know. Look forward to your comments. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I don't disagree with you. I think that kicked that into a fever pitch because it was such a great game and such an incredible final couple of minutes and back and forth. And ultimately, you knew that whoever was going to get that ball was going to win. Now, maybe you don't cry as many tears for Buffalo because, as Phil mentioned, it was 13 seconds. All you got to do is stop them for 13 seconds. And if you can't do that, maybe you deserve to lose. But still, do you deserve to lose based on a coin flip? Probably not. So I think we were going to head this way anyway. I mentioned that the 2018 game is one that really sticks out to me. 2018 AFC Championship game, it's Brady, it's Mahomes. It's kind of the first Mahomes team, right? And he's this phenom, and here are the Chiefs, and they're in the AFC Championship game, and here are the old guard and the Patriots. And it's this great back-and-forth game, and both offenses are burning white hot, and then it goes into overtime, and whoever gets the coin toss is going to march down the field and win. Brady and the Patriots, of course, get the coin toss because everything always flips their way. And that was really disheartening, to have to, and maybe it was because it was Brady, maybe it was because of the Patriots, I'm not sure, but that's kind of where it kicked in for me. I was glad they moved on from sudden death because I was never a big sudden death fan. I think that puts way too much emphasis on the coin flip. This latest tweak, fine, whatever. I don't mean to give like the most lame take on this, but I just don't really have a strong feeling overall about NFL overtime rules. I think this tweak could be a little bit better than what we have. If it was up to me, gun to my head, I'd say just 10-minute extra frame. But I get what they want to do here. They want to try to make it as fair as possible and limit the whining and complaining. And if both teams are guaranteed a possession, then maybe you finally have that. 239-1070. Warwick is next up. That's a cool name, Warwick. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, Schultz. Hey, it's great to hear you on the radio.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
My question is this. Are the Colts Super Bowl contenders with Matt Ryan?
I wish I could say definitively that they are. I think you need to see how the rest of the pieces fall together, what they do in the draft, what they do at receiver, what are they going to do at left tackle. I view the Matt Ryan move, Warwick, as a move to get them back on top of the division. And I think that's how I view the Colts. I think that they should be and could be and should be the AFC South champion
And then in a single elimination playoff, maybe some weird things break that way. But I would still put them behind a lot of the teams that have the higher ceiling quarterbacks behind them. I don't think that just quarterback makes this team a contender. I think the Colts need to matter more at the positions that matter. And not only were they falling short at quarterback, but they're not good enough at receiver. They're not good enough at left tackle. They're not good enough at pass rush. And they need to improve all those levels if they really want to get to where they want to be.
And also, do you think the Colts go wide receiver, tight end with their first 2 picks in the draft?
I would be shocked if they don't go wide receiver. And thanks for the call, Warwick. I'd be shocked if they don't go wide receiver at 42. I think they'll absolutely go there and probably get another tight end too. I mean, they've got Granson. They brought back Mo Alley Cox. But you need a dynamic playmaker there. And Alley Cox is a nice bit player. I have no idea what Granson's going to be, but I would be really surprised if they didn't go. I think they'll draft a tight end too. Yeah, I do. But I think wide receiver will be the first player off the board for them with that first pick there at 42. And, to kind of go back to Warwick's point, does this make them a contender? The Colts' problem, and this was even the case, I don't want to say revisionist history because I don't think that's the case. How you felt about this team coming off of the Patriots game was very different than how you felt about this team coming off the Jacksonville game, right? Like you thought, you talked yourself into, okay, maybe this team can really contend here. And then after the Jacksonville game, it became, I told you so. No, they couldn't contend. And that's what always ends up happening. But I think where, at least I've been tried to be consistent, and I think a lot of other people, I'm not just going to take sole credit for this, other people have been consistent, whereas you look at this roster, and it's a good roster, and it's a roster that has been improved from where it was. The problem with this roster is that all of your great players are at positions that don't matter as much. It is wonderful to have a great, transcendent, home run hitting running back. It's wonderful. Do you need that to win a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. It's amazing to have a 10-year All-Pro, Hall of Fame right now if his career ended today. That's how certain you are that he will be. Left guard in Quentin Nelson. Do you need to have an interior offensive lineman be that elite and play at that level to win a championship? Absolutely not. Kenny Moore's great. Do you need a great slot corner? Not really. DeForest Buckner, great player, run stuffer, right in the middle of the line. Do you need a great interior defensive lineman? Well, if you're Aaron Donald, maybe. But he's not that level of player. So all these places where they're really good, it's great to have that stuff. I'm not anti-Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard is a nice playmaker and a really good player for them. Quentin Nelson, the same thing. I don't want to pay Quentin Nelson $25 million a year. and eventually the Colts are going to have to cross that bridge here, and it looks like they're going to just give him whatever he wants as far as the extension is concerned. But you need to be better at the positions that really matter. And the positions that really matter are quarterback. Duh. Everybody knows that. But in today's NFL, as you've seen, wide receiver, edge, left tackle, even a great cornerback, the Colts aren't even set there at corner. Because you get Ngakoue, and I think it's the right move. But I really liked Rakestraw, and I thought that he had a really nice year last year. And now you're short there. You're relying on guys that you don't know with Rodgers, and you don't know what you're going to have at that spot. So that's another area where they need to improve. One area where I'm still confident, and I'm trying to maintain confidence, and I've been the captain of the Frank Reich ship. I think Frank Reich is a good coach. I do. I understand the criticisms. I don't think his play calling or decision-making is infallible or anything like that. But I am fully confident that Frank Reich can be the head coach that helps lead the Colts to a championship. And I know a lot of you disagree with that, which is fine. If that ship sinks, then I'm just going to go ahead and go down with it. I'm pretty confident. I'm less confident in and some people would say it's the opposite. They're more confident in Bauer than they are in Reich. I'm a little less confident in Bauer. I really do think that this brain trust is the right brain trust. I think the problem is that eventually you have to see results. And you're going year 5 with Reich, year 6 with Bauer. You got to show something. More than 9-8, 7-9, 10-6 in a playoff exit. Need more than that. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to all our guests today. Greg Rakestraw, Joel Erickson, Brian Neubert. Thanks to JMV for letting me sit in here and house sit for him. He'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate you listening. If you want to follow along, at Schultz975, Corrine Schultz, Monday nights, 7:30, Comcast, and more. Check us out on our YouTube channel. You guys have a great night.
Put on your helmet. It's about to get real.